Story 1.
I caught my wife cheating with our grandson's friend, uncovered lies, and recorded the shocking truth. Let me share a story that happened to me. I've been happily married for 40 years. I'm 64 and my wife is 62. Our relationship is more than ordinary. It's truly unique. We're not just financially stable and healthy, but also proud parents of 2 great daughters who gave us 3 amazing grandchildren. Our journey together goes beyond simple companionship. We're deeply connected. Reflecting on it, I realized we're not just best friends, but true halves. Even younger couples would envy our close bond. So, you're probably wondering what could go wrong in such an ideal scenario. One Saturday stands out vividly. The sun was shining, making the day full of joyful anticipation. I was excited about a golf game with my friends, the highlight of my week, breaking the monotony of everyday life to enjoy quality time on the golf course. With enthusiasm, I said goodbye to our house, walked with my golf clubs, ready and smiling broadly, completely unaware of the unexpected turn of events ahead. I was looking forward to the day, not knowing a fateful incident was about to happen. As I impatiently approached the golf course, a sudden realization struck me. I forgot my reliable golf club repair tool, a must-have for any golf lover. My friends expected me to bring it, but in the rush of leaving home, I completely forgot. Frustrated, I decided to correct my mistake and quickly turned around, driving back home. After parking the car and getting out, I noticed Victor at the front door, ready to help in any situation. It's amazing how such a young man can be reliable and self-confident. We're sincerely grateful to have him in our lives. While I've turned to him for help before, his presence today was unexpected since he was already here yesterday. This made me wonder if his wife had asked for something unknown to me, or if she invited him without informing me. Curious, I cautiously stepped into the house, not expecting anything unusual. To my horror, I saw my wife in the living room in her undergarments alongside Victor. When I entered, I was surprised to see my partially dressed wife and Victor, shirtless, coming out of the guest bathroom. Their astonished faces showed they were caught off guard by my sudden appearance. Although there were no obvious signs of a compromising situation, their reaction and the palpable smell of closeness in the air left no doubt. I barely managed to avoid being caught red-handed in an unexpected situation. I found myself at home in a delicate situation. My wife asked about the reason for my early arrival, but I chose to ignore her and directly addressed Victor. It was an unprecedented occasion since I always considered him a well-mannered young man. He hesitantly tried to explain his presence, and my wife immediately intervened, raising her voice in his defense. She explained that she had called him to service the pool. To my surprise, I replied that I doubted the need to clean the pool as it had been taken care of only the day before. I saw her trying hard to regain control of the situation, but it didn't work out as she hoped. She quickly realized her earlier statement sounded silly and tried to save the situation by blaming the pool not being cleaned before. On the other hand, Victor looked completely shocked, as if he had seen a ghost. I pointed at Victor and firmly stated that I was aware of his actions. Even though my suspicions were based on limited facts, I told him that if I found him in my house again, I wouldn't hesitate to take extreme measures. Hurriedly leaving, he didn't forget to put on his shirt and quickly disappeared into his car. Despite my wife's pleas to stop accusing her, she insisted I was being unreasonable and had some kind of mental disorder. It's crucial to note that our marriage, as I mentioned earlier, has always been strong. I trusted her completely, and until this incident, I had no reason to doubt her decency. I could feel it in the air. There was a palpable awkwardness in their body language. My intuition told me I stumbled upon something, and her defensive reaction only confirmed my suspicions. It reached a point where she threatened to involve our children and grandson, trying to shift the blame onto me. Curiosity made me find out why she chose such an outfit, because she usually prefers more modest outfits for sunbathing. The bra and underwear she wore for sunbathing were not what I expected. They were transparent, which surprised me. When she explained she was going to sunbathe and swim, it was hard for me to believe it, considering the cool weather. In all these years, I've never seen her swim in such conditions. Something was off, and I felt like she wasn't being completely honest. Despite her attempts to make me doubt myself through intimidation methods, I remained confident in my intuition and firm in my beliefs. I thought about the length of this novel, considering he is only 19 years old, and we have known about him for 3 years. This made me doubt that she was manipulating and deceiving me for much longer than I had initially assumed. Our differences quickly escalated into a sharp quarrel, which happens between us very rarely. Despite my accusations, she stubbornly denied all her actions. At this time, friends called and asked about my lateness. I considered going to a psychologist, but in the end, I decided to go. I hope this will give me the opportunity to calm down and gain clarity of mind. While playing golf, memories from the past kept popping up, making me wonder if she was unfaithful and if she manipulated me by using means of manipulation. It gradually became clear to me that I hadn't noticed this throughout our marriage. If I hadn't identified them in that delicate situation, I would most likely have continued to accept her explanations without question. It suddenly dawned on me that I had been harboring this suspicion for a long time, but deep love for her and naivety did not allow me to admit it. I have never delved into these uncertainties, but there was one distinct memory that always remained in the shadows despite the passage of time. I decided to return to it, refraining from trying to classify these memories as suppressed. On the contrary, I began to look at them anew from the point of view of a mature and knowledgeable person, far from the young and inexperienced 20-year-old boy that I once was. We lived together before marriage during my 2-year college studies. I had my first experience of a real romantic relationship after the period of military operations had passed. As a late teenager in this field, I perceived our connection as something unique, but looking back, I realized that there were obvious signs that I didn't notice at the time. In the process of deepening into reflection, the pieces of the puzzle began to connect. These memories surfaced in connection with recent events, evoking meetings in which, as I now suspect, at least 3 different men with whom she was in close relationships at that time took part. Among them was my former best friend, with whom I gradually grew distant. It's been over 2 decades since we last saw each other because he now lives in another country. These thoughts persistently trouble my mind, refusing to fade away. The weight of these memories builds up in me, not allowing me to cope. They keep me awake at night, robbing me of much-needed sleep. Suffocating anxiety takes over my entire mind. When my wife predictably denied my accusations of having an improper relationship with our grandson's friend, she manipulated our innocent children into this situation, concealing the most crucial details. Keeping the truth hidden, she intentionally didn't mention the image etched in my memory. She was in a tempting bikini next to our grandson's friend, shirtless, while slightly talking about innocently caring for the pool in our backyard. Perhaps she had deceived me countless times before, easily escaping my notice. But this instance was an undeniable revelation, an indisputable betrayal that pierced my heart like a dagger. I found myself in a situation where she tried to portray me as behaving oddly in her later years. Even more distressing was my inability to convey to my children and grandson that intuition told me something was wrong. They just didn't want to believe that she was alone in the living room, dressed provocatively, and he was in boxer shorts without a tank top. The entire scenario turned into a verbal clash, and she manipulated the situation, creating the impression that she was right. The following weeks were spent in the toughest struggle, resulting in a significant weight loss. Despite my thinness, my mental state deteriorated rapidly, and I increasingly feared I might damage myself. Additionally, she successfully turned all my children against me, painting me as a scoundrel in their eyes. Unlike her, I'm not naturally assertive and don't know how to engage in active disputes. I'm one of those people who prefer to avoid conflicts and resolve them privately. But this situation became a turning point for me. I began to doubt myself, leading me to seek solace in individual consultations. It was during this time that I realized my marriage seemed to have been built on a false foundation. My therapist introduced me to the principle of mindfulness, but I struggled to grasp its essence. Despite all my efforts, I couldn't master the art of being present in the moment. Weeks passed, and I increasingly avoided discussing my spouse's infidelity. But then came the turning point when I could no longer suppress my emotions. Summoning the courage, I finally began talking about the betrayal that occurred in her younger years. The shock on her face was indescribable. Initially, she categorically denied her guilt and dismissed my accusations as nonsense. She seemed determined to find someone to blame for her own insecurities. Despite my disappointment, I remained calm and reiterated that none of her words were entirely true. Nevertheless, she continued desperately searching for a scapegoat, clutching at straws to confirm her unfounded suspicions. It was disheartening to witness the trust in our relationship being shattered because her accusations only widened the gap between us. I couldn't stay calm any longer. I reached my breaking point. It was a breakdown like none I'd had before. I crumpled to the floor, overwhelmed by uncontrollable tears. Even simple breathing felt like a daunting task, not to mention speaking. Time seemed to stretch endlessly. But this incident caught her off guard. Truly surprised, she knelt down and hugged me tightly, comforting me as I gradually recovered. She denied any wrongdoing and assured me of her willingness to address our issues. She mentioned not understanding my state of mind and feared I might leave her for unjustifiable reasons. Yet I still lacked concrete evidence because she didn't admit to anything. Gradually, we delved into the unfolding events, discovering the discrepancies in our memories, especially regarding crucial moments like time and events. The fact that our recollections differed surprised me, given the over a decade we had spent living together. Although my memories felt remarkably fresh, As if only from last week, she mainly remained silent, listening attentively. It seemed she was taken aback by the volume of my memories, realizing that I wasn't as distrustful as she might have assumed. A part of me suspected that she was attempting to gauge my knowledge to assess the potential impact of her own confession. The closest she came to confessing was when she suggested a meeting with my psychologist if I found it helpful. While recounting her wrongdoings, she cautiously admitted that disclosing everything might alter my perception of her. This brought to mind Jack Nicholson's witty line from A Few Good Men: "You want the truth, but you can't handle it." I found myself consumed by curiosity, pondering whether the truth could surpass the torment my imagination had conjured, thereby intensifying my current suffering. Moreover, I started contemplating how she involved my children in this intricate web. I strongly believed she harbored a deep sense of shame. After 4 decades together, I felt I knew her inside out. To prove to our children I wasn't crazy and that she was mistaken, I decided to secretly record our conversations. I was determined to gather evidence of her infidelity. One morning, I had the idea to reach out to my former best friend, suspected of cheating with my wife. We hadn't seen him in over 2 decades. In a desperate attempt to get him to confess, I decided to secretly record our conversation. Until that moment, the thought of such a call hadn't occurred to me. After obtaining his number from a mutual friend, I dialed it with a pounding heart and trembling hands. I connected with a voice that seemed both familiar and sleepy because of the late hour in his part of the world. I said his name, mustering the courage to tell him the purpose of my call. Trying my best to keep an even voice, I grappled with the weight of the passing years, mentioning how it had been a while. There was a moment of silence, and I almost felt a thought flash through his head, replaying the steps of our past friendship. He replied, his tone wary, asking who I was. Summoning my strength, I took a deep breath and said I was David. His voice held a hint of disbelief as he echoed my name, asking if it was really me. I confirmed, and our conversation quickly shifted to another topic. We exchanged forced pleasantries, attempting to squeeze 2 decades of life into a few minutes, but the pain of lost time lingered. Despite the gravity of my call, I knew I couldn't delay any longer. Gathering my remaining courage, I posed a question. I asked if he remembered Anna. A pause followed, and even through the phone, I sensed his concern. He hesitantly answered, confirming he remembered her. With a heavy heart, I weakly stated, choked with emotion, that she was my wife. After standing in silence for a moment to let the weight of my words sink in, I continued, informing him that Anna passed away last night. Silence enveloped us, seemingly stretching for an eternity. Realizing he must have been caught off guard, his thoughts raced, trying to make sense of the news. I took a deep breath, attempting to convey emotions. Before her passing, I said, she trusted me. I mentioned her confession about his infidelity and revealed the betrayal, the lies, the lost years. There was a sharp intake of breath and a heavy sigh at the other end of the line. Cutting him off, I stated that I was choking, my voice filled with a mix of resentment and betrayal. How could you do this to me? You were my closest friend. On the other end, his sobs and choked voice intertwined. He admitted, with grief, evident in every word, that he couldn't even express how deeply sorry he was. It was a terrible mistake that haunted him every day, and he regretted it with all his inner strength. Despite feeling the weight of his remorse, my heart still bore a powerful mix of anger and pain. When he made his confession, I couldn't help but continue recording our conversation, knowing it was the only way to force my wife to finally admit the truth. As he sobbed uncontrollably, the burden of his guilt over more than 20 years finally revealed itself. He pleaded for forgiveness, expressing his deep regret for letting me down in the most terrible way. When his confession lingered in the air for a moment, I felt a deep sense of loss. Our once strong friendship, built on trust and camaraderie, had collapsed beyond recognition. With a heavy heart, I uttered the last words saying goodbye to John. After ending the conversation, a mix of emotions overwhelmed me. Although my heart remained heavy, I found comfort in having the indisputable proof I needed. Yet, the pain of betrayal still gnawed at my heart. When my wife returned, I mustered the courage and played the recording for her. As she listened, a deep shadow of embarrassment crossed her face. She could no longer deny the truth. She was ensnared in a web of deception. With tears in her eyes, she pleaded with me not to share the recording with our children. To secure her confession about the other 2 alleged affairs, we struck a deal. Recognizing the need for proof, I meticulously documented every detail of her admission. After the heart-wrenching confession, she implored me to promise not to share the recording. Feeling the need for space and reflection, I suggested we separate, giving each of us time to reassess our lives. It was time to reflect on the state of our decades-long marriage. Having spent over 4 decades together, I, a 64-year-old, and she, a 62-year-old, believed we had a strong and dependable connection. But everything changed when I discovered her connection with our grandson's friend. Troubling memories surfaced, casting doubt on her loyalty throughout our relationship. Despite the evidence, she vehemently denied any involvement with our grandson's friend. Instead, she attempted to blame me for our impending breakup, preserving her innocence. Surprisingly, during our conversation, I agreed, knowing it would devastate her. She suggested an amicable divorce where I'd shoulder the blame for ending our marriage, citing my suspicions rather than her infidelity. Unbeknownst to her, I recorded every admission she made. The next day, my children approached me, urging reconciliation with their mother. It was then that I decided to reveal the recording, presenting irrefutable evidence. Consequently, they began to see her in a different light, realizing the extent of her betrayal. Angry at my decision not to fulfill the terms of our agreement, my wife waged war, intending to claim everything in the event of a divorce. However, she failed to understand that at my age, material possessions matter little. As long as I have enough to sustain myself until the age of 90, when many family members typically pass away, my focus is on something else. The love and support of my children are genuinely important, along with the legacy I'll leave behind. Despite pressure from those advocating for the preservation of our 4-decade relationship, they seem to forget that, with age, comes the desire to spend remaining years with someone who truly loves you. Whenever I look at her, all I see is deception, manipulation, betrayal, and lies. I've reached a point where living a life built on lies has become unbearable. After 3 long months, we divorced. Anna moved in with her daughter, and I sold the house, dividing the money before embarking on world travels. The children informed me of Anna's suffering from shame, her descent into deep depression, and a subsequent stroke that left her paralyzed. I experienced a moment of anger before resuming the call and inquiring with Amy, my sister-in-law, about her invitation to that man to meet us at the hospice. Amy confirmed that she had indeed invited him, though she had initially tried to dissuade Elaine. She wasn't sure about Elaine's reasons for wanting him there. I expressed surprise that Susie might also be present, but Amy clarified that Elaine had mentioned the 3-year-old was too young to hear their discussion. I decided to drop Susie off at her parents' place before heading to the hospice, and Amy and I made our way there together. Upon our arrival, Amy and I received a warm welcome from the nurse, Cindy, who informed us that Elaine was having a good day and had used the morphine pump less frequently. We then proceeded to Elaine's room, and Amy assured me that everything would be okay. The room had a peaceful atmosphere, with a garden view, but my discomfort increased when I noticed Trevor sitting by the headboard. I greeted Elaine by shaking her hand instead of with a kiss and sat down with Amy on the opposite side of the bed from Trevor. Elaine began by expressing her gratitude for our presence, acknowledging the awkwardness of the situation but emphasizing that they all wanted what was best for Susie. I reiterated that Susie was my top priority, directing my gaze at Trevor and questioning his presence. Elaine, however, delayed her explanation, initially thanking both Amy and me for our support and describing Amy as an exceptional big sister. She also revealed her struggle with infertility and her gratitude for Amy's support through the infertility testing and in vitro fertilization process. Elaine praised Amy as her hero and a wonderful aunt to Susie. She expressed her confidence that Amy would continue to love and care for Susie and help me raise her. Then Elaine broached the more complicated matter, acknowledging the pain her relationship with Trevor had caused me. I expressed my irritation and questioned her reasons for cheating on me with him. Elaine attributed her actions to the desperation she felt during their struggles with conception. Despite Amy's assurance that my participation count was fine, I didn't quite believe her and glanced at Amy, who simply shrugged. Elaine explained that she had been desperate and ready to try anything. Trevor worked in the office next door, and one day during lunch he saw her crying. She looked at Trevor with a smile and continued. Trevor had been kind and comforting, holding her hand while she cried, and over the next few months they became close friends. I snorted and rolled my eyes, expressing my disbelief. I commented that I understood she might have been desperate and willing to try anything. Elaine added that Trevor had volunteered to assist, to which I responded with a disdainful look and suggested that he should have stayed clear. Elaine then detailed her reasons for her actions, explaining that initially, her motive was to improve her chances of getting pregnant. However, over time, she and Trevor had fallen in love. She described it as an incredible experience and expressed her desire to find a way to keep both me and Trevor in her life. I questioned why she would think I'd ever agree to such a situation, and Elaine admitted she had been afraid I would divorce her when I found out about her affair. Instead, she described how I had become her hero for supporting her throughout the entire IVF process. She acknowledged that despite having considered divorce, I had prioritized our child and decided to stay. She believed this demonstrated that I still loved her enough to ask one last favor. She then asked that I allow Trevor to be part of Susie's life and grant him joint custody after she was gone. I looked at Trevor, who appeared concerned and unlike his usual self. I was taken aback by Elaine's request and exchanged surprised glances with Amy. Finally, I firmly refused, stating there was no way I would agree to giving Trevor joint custody. Elaine, after looking at me in amazement and shedding some tears, composed herself and conceded that she had hoped for a more understanding response, but had no choice. She insisted I had to give Trevor joint custody. Then Elaine revealed that Susie was not my biological child. In response to my questioning, she explained that she had wanted a child with each of us and had convinced Amy to use Trevor's analysis for IVF. She had planned to use my analysis for a second IVF in the future. However, due to her cancer diagnosis, that plan was no longer possible. Turning to Amy, I raised my eyebrows, and she confirmed that she had used Trevor's IVF sample at Elaine's request. She expressed confidence that a DNA test would confirm her parental rights to Susie. Trevor was smirking, but Amy quickly clarified that a DNA test wouldn't help him at all. She explained that Elaine had tried to persuade her to use Trevor's IVF sample, but she had refused and discarded it as medical waste. My genetic material was the only one used in our IVF. Elaine became upset and yelled at Amy, asking why she had done this. Amy defended her decision, emphasizing that what Elaine had asked her to do was not only selfish but morally wrong. She revealed that Elaine's comment about being a genetic dead end was untrue. Elaine realized her mistake and asked for forgiveness. Amy explained that the eggs that combined with my analysis were hers, making her Susie's biological mother. She also mentioned that after Elaine was gone, we would get married and she would legally adopt her own daughter. I responded firmly to Elaine, making it clear that I had no intention of willingly sharing her or my daughter with Trevor. I questioned Elaine about why she hadn't pursued a divorce and had gone through IVF with me. I expressed my anger, telling her that when Amy revealed her request to switch my materials with Trevor's, I had been close to kicking her out of the house. I also mentioned that Amy and I had fantasized about taking revenge on both Elaine and Trevor, but had ultimately decided on a more suitable response to their betrayal. We had considered the possibility of using Elaine as a surrogate mother, but various factors, including cancer, had made that plan unfeasible. Elaine asked about her eggs, and Amy informed her that they were stored in the clinic's freezer, anonymously labeled. Amy explained that they might be used by one of her patients in need of an egg donor in the future, but Trevor wouldn't have any involvement with the baby. Despite the circumstances, Amy and I expressed our love for Elaine and offered her a chance to make amends before her passing. We emphasized the importance of making her remaining days special for Susie, who would face a challenging time after her mother's passing. We mentioned the story we would tell Susie about her birth, giving Elaine a choice between being portrayed as the deceitful woman who betrayed me or as the brave sister who helped us fulfill our dream of having a child. We asked Elaine if she wanted to be a hero for Susie, at least for once.
Story 2.
My cheating wife lost it when I refused to sign the birth certificate for the child from her affair. I've been married for 7 years to my 33-year-old wife, and we don't have children. 2 years back, she began a new job and has excelled. Initially, she mentioned a CO worker she disliked, calling him an a-hole. However, her attitude towards him softened over time, and she stopped talking about him much. I didn't see a reason to worry. Despite our imperfect marriage, I've always trusted her, and we generally got along well. Jump ahead, about a month ago I started noticing changes. She began texting more frequently, keeping her phone close at all times. Her evenings and weekends suddenly became busier. She grew distant and avoided any affection. Plus, she started lying about odd things. The final lie happened when she packed for a business trip, bringing a much more revealing swimsuit than she'd ever worn before. When I asked, she claimed she ordered it online untrue and decided it wasn't suitable for a work trip to Florida. Yet, she took it along on the trip. While she was away, I chose to investigate. Throughout our entire relationship, I'd never snooped through my wife's belongings, but I was fed up with the constant deceit. In her work bag, I discovered a caricature-like drawing of her on hotel paper. Alongside it was a post-it note with directions to her male KIO worker's house, written in her handwriting. Reviewing our bank statements revealed numerous instances where she claimed to be at work, but was actually dining at various city restaurants. This prompted me to dig deep. As a professional private investigator, I have no qualms about intruding on privacy when faced with substantial suspicion. I legally placed a GPS tracker in her car, which is titled under my name in our state. Upon her return from the trip, she mentioned going to a coffee shop and running errands on a Sunday. Yet her car didn't come close to a Chipotle. But she returned home carrying a Chipotle cup, confirming she'd eaten there. Then, on the following Tuesday, she said she was attending a company dinner and working late. The GPS data showed her leaving work at 3:20 p.m. and remaining at the restaurant until 9 p.m. The big problem happened the next Saturday. We were supposed to watch my niece play tennis at 8:00 a.m. She said she wanted to drive alone so she could leave the tennis place and go work at a coffee shop after the game. She said she was going to X coffee shop and talked a bit about why she wanted to go there. I said, "Have a good day," and went to my car. Using the GPS, I saw she drove straight to a Comfort Inn motel. I got to the Comfort Inn and waited in a nearby parking lot until I could be sure she was inside, not in her car. I called her from the lobby and asked how X coffee shop was. She said it was good and asked why I wanted to know. I just said, "Come down here so we can talk." When she came down, she said, "It's not what you think. He has to do this because he's been caught with other girls before." I asked what she meant, and she said he always works in hotel rooms. She said they didn't do anything physical, and that's when I told her to get out of my car. I left, and she called me 50 times. I finally answered and said if she tells even one lie, I'm hanging up. She admitted they kissed once about 5 months ago, but said it was a mistake and meant nothing. She kept saying they were just working. I asked how many times she met him in hotels, and she said about 10 in the last 9 months. Then I asked what she did on that Tuesday, and she got defensive. She said she was at work all day until a work dinner. I told her I thought she was lying and hung up. She came to our house while I was loading my stuff and my dog into my car. She stayed in the driveway, refusing to move until we talked. She was crying and saying sorry, really upset. That day I left, and it's been a month. Since then, we've met a few times for her to explain things, but when I ask my questions, she gets upset, defensive, and says, "Answering isn't good for us." She's lied about small things, and when I call her out, she says I'm trapping her. She's firm that it wasn't a romantic thing. She claimed they were just good friends and he was helping with her job. Their talks got inappropriate, discussing our problems. She confessed to texting him and deleting the texts, saying they weren't romantic but could be seen as flirting. She said he helped with her depression and work. I want to trust her, maybe because I love her or I'm scared of the truth. I'm stuck trying to find the truth, but even if I find it, I don't see how I can get past what I already know. Am I losing it? Update. We're a month post D-Day. I conversed with her last night. Here's the scoop. I inquired about her chats with the man in the past 4 weeks. She mentioned he's clueless about my confrontation at the D-Day hotel. She hasn't discussed it with him, deeming it a marital issue unrelated to him. I asked about cutting off non-work talks with him. She claimed she's scaling back. That phrase set me off. She believes she must taper, instead of going no contact because he's unaware of me catching her. She then fibbed about a trivial detail. I called her out, utterly sure she was lying. She vehemently denied it, never yielding. I let it go, adding it to the heap of unresolved problems. After she claimed to be tapering off social talk with the other man, I stashed a voice recorder in my house and split. Last night, I checked the tape and found my wife and this man gabbed for well over an hour in at least 2 calls. The recording stopped in the afternoon, so I assumed they spoke more in the evening. I didn't catch many specifics, but I heard a few incriminating remarks. They discussed our marriage's status, something she claimed he knew nothing about. They chatted about using a secret phone app to avoid detection. She insulted me for arriving late for breakfast. They talked and chuckled about numerous topics. I haven't heard my wife that elated since we dated. I confronted her. She admitted to some, denied the rest. I'm beyond caring. I'm meeting a divorce lawyer this morning. Over the past fortnight, I've maintained no communication with my spouse. Recently, she reached out via text, seeking a conversation. I responded, stating my condition for discussion. She'd have to come clean about everything before I'd engage. She alleged awareness of a wiretap on her phone, which didn't exist, but I let her believe it and claimed I already knew all. I insisted on hearing the truth directly from her. Eventually, she relented, agreeing to sit down to divulge everything. When she visited, she confessed that her involvement with another man was indeed intimate, spanning the last 6 months. She admitted to booking a hotel room the day prior to our anniversary for their rendezvous. She also confirmed ongoing communication with him post-discovery, claiming he assisted her in managing my inquiries. She asserted that the affair had ended for good and expressed a desire to mend our marriage. This confession unfolded 6 painful weeks after I caught her in the hotel. I suspect her confession only emerged due to my persistence, although she contends she always intended to come clean, aiming to minimize the hurt for both of us. The damage accrued during those 6 weeks appears insurmountable. Update: we ended up divorcing. I took my time before making that decision, and in hindsight, I wish I hadn't waited as long. My ex-wife wanted to stay together, although her reasons were unclear to me. However, Her continuous lies and gaslighting made reconciliation impossible. Going through the divorce has been the most challenging experience of my life. During my marriage, I was fully committed. I wasn't perfect, but I loved my wife wholeheartedly and visioned a lifetime together. I was willing to do anything to make her happy, and I believe I made significant efforts on multiple occasions. Now that I've distanced myself from that relationship, I can see it for what it truly was, a narcissistic person draining the energy and goodness out of someone who cared. The marriage felt completely one-sided, with one person giving everything, and the other taking even more than could be given. Towards the end, I started believing I was a worthless partner. She undermined my profession, my personality, and my appearance. However, since the divorce, my business has thrived, and I've been able to date women I once thought were out of my league. I used to think I was unattractive, partly due to my ex-wife's influence, but now I've had gorgeous, much younger women approach me in bars. I've had a few wonderful relationships with amazing women. These relationships ended amicably due to compatibility issues, but they helped me see how terrible of a partner my ex-wife truly was. I have no contact with my ex anymore, and I rarely think about her. The divorce became contentious because she thought I was receiving too much of the money, even though I accepted less than 50% to ensure a smoother process without disrupting businesses and retirements. It's astounding that she could cheat on someone and then complain about the amount of money they're taking, even if it's less than half. This reinforced my belief that I made the right decision and needed to distance myself from this toxic situation as quickly as possible. I lost some friends during the divorce, but I'm not bothered by it. Most of them took my side, and I have no concern for those who didn't. They made it easy for me to let them go. The hardest part was losing my in-laws, as I genuinely cared about some of them. However, I understand their stance. I sent enough correspondence to my ex-wife's affair partner's wife to make it clear what had happened, and while she never responded, I respect her decision. For anyone going through this nightmare, here's some advice. Separate yourself from the situation to think clearly without being manipulated. Seek professional help. Surround yourself with friends and family. Make healthy choices. Stay active, limit substance use, and prioritize self-care. Listen to advice, but ultimately make your own decisions, because it's your life. There were incredibly dark days after discovering the affair, but after the initial heartache, this period has been the best time of my life. I find genuine happiness every day. If you're facing a similar situation and need advice from someone who's been through it, feel free to reach out. I'm here to help. All right, that was a fun story. Now let's move on to another exciting one. Stay tuned, and let's dive into story 2. Around a month ago, I discovered that both of my children were the results of affairs my soon-to-be ex-wife had. I had been harboring suspicions for a while that neither of them was biologically mine. 6 years ago, when my son was born, I experienced immense happiness. I had married my best friend, we had a child together, and everything seemed perfect. However, as he grew older, I started to have doubts about his parentage. He didn't resemble me, and the more he grew, the more apparent it became that he looked vastly different from what I would expect my child to look like. I didn't want to let mere appearances drive my suspicions, as I'm not a petty or paranoid person. It was my wife's behavior that raised alarm bells. Whenever she went out, her whereabouts didn't match her claims. She had unexplained gaps in her schedule, refused to let me interact with anyone from her workplace, and a close friend of hers accused her of flirting with their significant other at the time. The lies she spun started catching up with her, especially after our son's birth. Yet despite her deceitful nature, I still loved her, foolish as it may sound. Whenever one of her lies was exposed, she would assure me of her love for me. She had managed to convince me that despite her dishonesty and manipulation, she wasn't an unfaithful woman. Last year, she became pregnant again, and I clung to a glimmer of hope that the child might be mine. However, when our daughter was born, it was evident that she was multi-ethnic. I declined to sign the birth certificate, and the subsequent paternity test I requested confirmed my suspicions all along. Neither of them shared my biological connection. The day I received those test results was the day I initiated divorce proceedings against my unfaithful spouse and walked away from the family I had built. I understood that my departure would shatter her son's life as he witnessed me leaving. Despite my apprehensions, I had been the best father I could be to him, pouring all my love and effort into being the dad he deserved. However, now when I see him, I am overcome with repulsion. I am repulsed by my unfaithful wife, repulsed by my own lack of trust in my instincts, and repulsed that the last 6 years of my life have amounted to nothing. Multiple individuals have labeled me a monster for leaving my son in this manner. Since I moved out, my ex has repeatedly attempted to manipulate me into reconciling by using him as a bargaining chip. She has him call me at odd hours of the night, crying and pleading for his daddy to return. On the day I packed my belongings to move out, she paraded him into the room to demonstrate the damage I was causing. Both online and offline, every time he is mentioned, I am criticized and condemned. Despite the fact that I am not biologically related to the boy, I am his father. Regrettably, I have now come to realize that for most people, my own feelings hold no significance. My parents are my sole supporters throughout this ordeal, while my own siblings brand me a reprehensible person for leaving a child in such a manner. My sense of betrayal and sorrow is disregarded because a child is involved. I understand it's not his fault. I know that the man he called his father for his entire life just walked away, but why am I expected to man up? Why should I pretend everything is fine and suppress my contempt for this entire situation? Why should I set aside my own life and emotions? I never truly was the boy's father, even though I loved him as one and still do. However, I would come to resent and despise him if I were forced to continue playing that role. I would loathe myself for not standing up and reclaiming my own life. He is not my child, and although it's not his fault, he is no longer my responsibility. I suppose sharing my personal issues achieved something. Nonetheless, I've noticed a few common questions, so I'll address them here. 1. Her son is aware of the truth behind my departure. I had a conversation with him, explaining that I am not his biological father and that his mother deceived me and was unfaithful. I made it clear that I harbor no ill feelings towards him, that he bears no responsibility for this situation, and that I will continue to think highly of him. 2. Some have suggested that I never truly cared for him, or that I was always searching for a way out. It's challenging to convey emotions in a text post like this, especially when overshadowed by strong animosity towards your unfaithful spouse. You're free to form your own opinions. 3. I have legal representation, and I won't be obligated to pay child support or alimony. Finally, for those suggesting that I should remain in her son's life and continue as his father, that's not realistically feasible. I don't hold any animosity towards him, but I've been deceived, lied to, and exploited by a selfish and deceitful individual who has now entangled her children in her web of lies. He is an innocent victim of her actions and bears no blame. However, it doesn't change the harsh reality we're confronted with. I don't hate him. I feel profound sadness when I think about his situation. Nevertheless, when I look at him, all I see is 6 years of deception, 6 years of being taken advantage of, and 6 long years of accumulated doubts and frustrations with a woman who used me. I can't simply set aside my resentment to try to be a part of his life because the life I lived with him was nothing more than a facade crafted by his mother. This is the harsh reality I must grapple with, and I cannot, in good conscience, subject myself or him to any more of it. I've noticed numerous armchair lawyers in the comments suggesting that this post is fake due to the reasons I mentioned earlier. I won't disclose my current state of residence, but I am currently in the process of legally challenging paternity, known as the disestablishment of paternity. This won't silence the 90% of you who think Google makes you legal experts, but at least I've made an effort. Edit. This will be my final edit before I move on from this little distraction I created for myself. Firstly, I want to express my gratitude to everyone for their kind words, whether in the comments, DMs, or chat. You've brightened my day, which hasn't happened in a while. I wish I could respond to each of you, but I can't thank you enough. Secondly, I've noticed many people vehemently criticizing the words I used to describe my soon-to-be ex. I want to clarify that I'm currently in one of the darkest periods of my life. All I feel is intense anger towards the woman who has devastated my life. Is the language I used inappropriate? Is the word I chose to describe her degrading and offensive? Yes, I'll admit that. But I won't apologize for it. What I've written here today reflects the harsh reality I'm facing right now. It's an unfiltered outpouring of emotions from a flawed man. I don't aim to make people hate women or convey a misogynistic message about women being terrible. That's not my goal here, and it's not the message of this post. I understand why people take issue with the word I used, and I accept that as valid criticism of my actions today. I came here today to find an outlet for the situation I'm in, to vent, grieve, and cope with the complex and intense emotions that have consumed me for the past month, a place where I can speak my mind freely. And you know what? I achieved that today. It was surprisingly good, thanks to all of you. Alright, here is a third story. We were previously together when we were both 22, right after college. Initially, I was more of a friend to her until I asked her out when we both ended up working in the same city. We dated for 9 months, and during that time, I believed she was the one for me. However, she suddenly became distant without any apparent reason. She never wanted anything serious back then, with thoughts of pursuing her master's degree in the USA. On the other hand, I wanted a serious relationship, but she viewed it as neediness and felt I should be grateful for the opportunity. She was quite popular in college and very attractive, which made me feel insecure because, at the time, I was working on building my own confidence and believed I was becoming a desirable partner. We stayed in touch due to mutual friends. From what I observed between the ages of 23 and 27, she dated various men. When she was 27 to 28, I heard that her parents attempted to set up an arranged marriage for her, but none of those prospects worked out. Eventually, she reached out to me, and one thing led to another, and we started dating. At the beginning, she asked me if I was seeking a serious relationship, and I told her I had never dated without serious intentions. However, I also mentioned that I wasn't in a hurry to get married and suggested that if she felt pressured by her parents or any other reason to get married quickly, she should explore other options. We dated for 6 months, which were honestly some of the best months of my life. Our bed life was fantastic, and she was incredibly accommodating and sweet. She brought up the topic of marriage, but I expressed that I wasn't ready. Many of our friends had gone through divorces, which made me cautious. I wanted to be sure before taking such a big step. She accused me of lying about my intentions, but I showed her messages where I agreed to a serious relationship, just not one that was rushed. She argued that overall we had been dating for over a year, and that she was eager to settle down. After this conversation, things became distant between us. Despite sending her sweet goodnight texts, she sometimes didn't even respond, and she showed little interest in meeting. A month passed, and then she told me that I should either marry her or move on, claiming that she could easily find another guy and that I was fortunate to have her. This situation has been painful for me, reminiscent of past experiences. I consider myself a modest person, but I also believe I've become an attractive catch. Despite my fondness for her, I made it clear that I wouldn't be pressured into marriage, so we decided to end our relationship. After another month, she started texting me again, and we rekindled our relationship. It's been 3 months now, and she has returned to being her sweet self. She admitted that she was wrong to claim she could easily find someone else, and said that I'm the right one for her. She expressed a desire for marriage as soon as I'm ready, and emphasized that her parents are urging her to get married, but she's willing to give me time. However, I feel overwhelmed by the idea of marriage at the moment and concerned about her ability to switch between being sweet and distant so abruptly. Is she being sweet just to persuade me to marry her? While I like her, I have a nagging feeling that this may not work well in the long run, and it seems like marriage is becoming more forced than natural. Update: the day after I posted my initial message, the thoughtful comments from people made me realize that I needed to end the relationship, a realization I probably should have reached without posting. Last Saturday was quite chaotic, and I'm really grateful for the advice I received. I decided to break up with her, and now I feel like it was the obvious choice. I called her in the morning and explained that I couldn't handle the abrupt shifts between being cold and distant. I also told her that she should find someone who aligns with her timeline, and I didn't want to be pressured into marriage. I expressed that it hurt me when she believed she was better than me and out of my league. I want someone who treats me as an equal. I mentioned that I wanted to end things on good terms and wished her well. Her response was anger. She accused me of never loving her and targeted some of my insecurities, which I prefer not to share even anonymously. The conversation became heated, and although I tried to calm her down and end things amicably, she was insistent that I had wasted her time and wasn't a real man, leading to a bitter ending. Then she sends me a text expressing her desire to end things on better terms. She suggests that she'll come over so we can have a productive conversation about our relationship. When I see her in person, she looks more attractive than ever. We decide to have an open exchange of criticism. I acknowledge her criticism about prioritizing work too much. I also share with her how her comment about being able to find someone better hurt me, emphasizing that such thoughts shouldn't be present in any relationship. She admits her mistake and proceeds to shower me with numerous compliments, saying that I'm the best guy she's ever dated. She asks if there's anything she can do to fix things, and I respond that this relationship is beyond repair, but I'm glad we didn't leave things on a sour note. I make it clear that nothing will change my decision to end it. Surprisingly, she then tries to initiate an intimate encounter, something she had always rejected before, considering it disgusting. I find it even more enjoyable than our previous lovemaking. Afterward, she suggests I take until the next day to decide if it's truly over and assures me she'll do whatever it takes to make amends. I firmly state that it's over, and I can't continue in a relationship where I have to threaten to end it to receive respect, love, and compromise. She starts crying and tells me that I've always been the one for her, the one she'd end up with. She reveals that some of her friends had shown interest in me over the years, but she kept it a secret because she wanted me in the end. Despite her persistent pleas for over an hour, I stand my ground, and eventually she accepts the reality and leaves. Later, I receive a screenshot from a friend of an Instagram story she posted for her close friends. I was part of that list earlier this week, but clearly not anymore. It's a special list in green where you only share content with a select group of followers. The story essentially criticizes me for wasting her time, among other things. I decide to send her a final message before blocking her. I express my hope that everything goes well in her life and that we can go our separate ways. I feel liberated and look forward to finding a woman who treats me with kindness and loves me for who I am. Alright, here is a fourth story. It all began as a typical Wednesday. I wrapped up my work and headed over to my girlfriend's place to hang out after dinner. We've been in a relationship for about a year and a half. When I arrived at her house, she explained that she had plans to meet up with her best friend and that they wanted to go to another girl's house, someone they've only met a few times, to have some drinks. I wasn't thrilled about going to this other girl's house and suggested that we just spend some time at her best friend's place and then head back home, since I had work in the morning. Besides, I find it more enjoyable to hang out with her best friend's boyfriend while they do their thing. So we went to her best friend's place, where I was supposed to pick her up to go to the other girl's house. However, when we got there, she suggested that we stay at her best friend's place, as I had originally proposed. I thought that was perfect, and we hung out there for about an hour. I had a beer with her boyfriend because he offered it to me, and I accepted to be polite. Generally, I try not to drink or do anything during the week, and if it were up to me, I'd be in bed by 11 p.m. Weekends are a different story when I'm not working. Anyways, the girls started taking vodka shots and were getting quite drunk. At this point, her friend mentioned wanting to leave and go somewhere else. I suggested that it was getting late, and I wanted to head home soon, so we should stay put. She didn't argue, but this idea got stuck in my girlfriend's mind, and now she was determined to go somewhere else. She called the girl whose house we were supposed to visit and told her we'd be coming over for a while. Initially, I said no, we shouldn't go there, and I needed to get to bed. It was nearly 11 p.m. by then. However, my girlfriend was insistent, so I foolishly decided to compromise. I said fine, we'll go, but only till 12, and then we're leaving. So we went to this place, and it was just as I expected, a shabby, messy apartment with nowhere to sit and a bunch of random people I'd rather not be associated with. It was nearing 11:30 at this point, and I thought, okay, it's not too long, I'll tough it out. The girls were doing their own thing, socializing with these other girls and continuing to drink. They ended up finishing a bottle of vodka, and all these girls were getting very drunk. When 12 rolled around, I went to get my girlfriend and told her it was time to go. However, she pretty much ignored me and continued what she was doing, almost like a child who doesn't want to leave the playground. I kept reminding her every few minutes, saying, it's time to go, let's go, but with no luck whatsoever. So here I am, trying to get these two drunk girls to leave this place so I can head home. That's when things start to take a strange turn. I'm not exactly sure how it began, but suddenly my girlfriend, her friend, and these two other girls all go into the bedroom and close the door. I overheard them mentioning something about a foursome. I'm standing outside the room in the living room with some other guys, and we're all thinking, what on earth is happening in there? I didn't want to just barge into the room to get my girlfriend, as this isn't my house, and I have no idea what these girls might be up to in there. I texted my girlfriend, but got no response. A few minutes passed, and I could hear them talking to each other inside, so I wasn't too concerned at that point. At some moment, one of the girls comes out of the room, and I approach the door. I go in and get my girlfriend and express my discomfort about what's happening. This startled the other two girls, and put an end to this supposed foursome. I tell my girlfriend once again, let's go. She agrees, and asks me to leave the room so she and her friend can get dressed, and then we'll leave. I wait for a few minutes, but they're still not out. I walk to the door, open it, and there she is, under the blankets on this not clean bed, receiving DJ from her best friend. I walk in, saying something like, that's gross, what are you doing? Of course, they immediately stop, and at this point, I'm trembling with shock. I tell her I'm leaving, put on my shoes, and I'm just unsure about what to do. Eventually, I decide, whatever, I'll bring these drunk idiots home. So I return and tell them to gather their stuff so we can leave this bizarre place. Her friend apologizes to me, and I'm at a loss for words. I basically remain silent and drop her friend off before taking my girlfriend home. When we get home, I try to talk with my girlfriend for a bit, but it's almost pointless as she's heavily intoxicated by this point. However, she realizes she did something wrong. Initially, she tries to excuse herself, claiming that I don't give her enough attention and don't engage in a particular activity that she enjoys. We argue for a bit, and I think I managed to get some points across, and then we head to bed. The next day, I explain everything to her. She and her friend thought I'd be okay with it because they are both girls. She also mentioned it was her friend who initiated it, and she sort of went along with it, finding it very strange. I explained that I'm upset and that it feels like she cheated on me. While I'd probably be more upset if it were another guy, it still doesn't sit well with me. Now she's feeling very guilty about it. After work, things are a bit awkward between us, and she's acting quite differently from her usual self. I'm quite uncertain about how to handle this situation. I understand that it's considered cheating regardless of whether it's with a guy or a girl. I also realize that if I hadn't walked into that room, I might never have found out about this. I told my girlfriend that I understand she might have thought it was okay because it was another girl, but I'm very uncomfortable with it. I made it clear that if something like this were to happen again, I would end the relationship. Do you think I'm being too forgiving in this situation?
Story 3.
I came across this unexpected turn of events in the smoothest way possible, right at the start of our yearly macho fishing weekend. Each year, me and my buddies, Scott, Stan, Roger, dive into the lake for 3 days of intense fishing, while our partners head off for their own getaway. Our bond is strong, with Roger and Mary as our closest friends. Stan Fortunato, Roger's relative and the youngest among us, joined our group and became one of our top players over time. Laura and I started our journey together straight out of school. We were young and confident, and I had plenty of drive. Right after graduation, I began a small pool business, growing it into a successful venture serving more than 100 homes, with a team of 4 in just a few years. 20 years later, we're thriving, serving over 1,500 homes with a team of 30, and Stan is a crucial part of our operation in Orlando. Regardless of education or work history, Stan's energy, hard work, and great teamwork made him the leader of our Orlando branch. Impressed by his performance, I gave him a significant raise and a share in the company. Our professional relationship turned into a close friendship, making work enjoyable every day. We expanded our business from Tampa to Orlando, becoming the top pool service in Central Florida. With pools everywhere, our business flourished, bringing in money and securing our position at the top. As our business grew, I realized the importance of managing our finances wisely. I turned to Howard, a retired expert in finance and a family member, for guidance. His advice was invaluable, guiding us through challenges in the business world. With Howard's help, I expanded our business even further during a favorable mortgage rate period. I trusted Howard and his wife Beth, who provided invaluable legal advice that propelled us to success. Beth, with her intelligence and strength, suggested setting up a trust to protect our assets from legal issues. I trusted her completely with this important task. We're living the good life now, with marital happiness and our pursuit of our dream home intertwined. Laura and her friends adore our new place, which boasts a luxurious pool, a themed patio bar, and a top-notch BBQ setup. And let's not forget about the fantastic perks Laura managed to secure for us. Our neighborhood's property values are skyrocketing, making us feel like we hit the jackpot. Naturally, I agreed to all of Laura's wishes, knowing that when it's time to sell, we'll come out on top. Love can make us do things we wouldn't usually do, but in the end, it's for the best, right? Today's the day. Laura and her friends are here at our fancy house for a weekend of fun. As soon as they arrived, I was told not to bother them while they have their fun. They want to enjoy themselves without us husbands around, and I was happy to go along with it. I was excited to get away from all the girl talk and weekend small talk. With my fishing gear ready and feeling free, I left quickly. Fishing felt like paradise. After weeks of working hard to manage my growing company, the idea of fishing and hanging out with my friends was amazing. I left the ladies to enjoy their wine and secrets. I couldn't help but think about how lucky I am to have Laura and her group of friends in my life. They can drive us husbands crazy sometimes, but we know deep down they make our days more interesting. With a big smile, I went to Roger's place, knowing our weekend adventure was just beginning. We had planned our lake trip carefully, aiming to leave at 6 o'clock in the evening and get to our destination by 9 o'clock. The next 3 days promised exciting fishing and good times. As I was getting ready to go, I suddenly realized I forgot my special bait, which I spent a lot of time making in my workshop. Fishing isn't just a hobby for me. It's something I'm passionate about. Making my own lures and tackle fills me with pride because having the right equipment can make a big difference in catching fish. The lure I've been working on for the past week is important to me. It's something I made with care, meant to attract big fish and give me a lot of satisfaction on the water. Realizing how important it was to have the right bait, I couldn't imagine going on our trip without it. So I told my fishing buddies I needed to go back and get my bait before we left. They understood and chuckled, knowing how much I care about fishing. At 5 o'clock in the evening, I got into the car, drove the short 7-minute trip home, parked alongside the other women's cars, walked to the side door, and quietly went down to the workshop, hoping not to disturb the ladies or get in trouble for coming back early, being careful not to make any noise. I approached the workbench and noticed I could hear the women talking. I couldn't help but laugh, realizing they were already having a good time, as shown by their laughter and talk. They were sitting in the shade by the Hawaiian hut on the side of my house, while the workbench was right under the window, so I could catch bits of their conversation. I'm not someone who listens in on others, and their talk didn't really interest me. But when I heard my wife talking about me in bed, I got curious. For some reason, I decided to record that part of the conversation on my iPhone, thinking I'd tease her about it later. Little did I know those next few minutes would mess up my fishing plans and turn everything upside down. Suddenly, I found myself in the middle of some juicy gossip. The ladies were really getting into it, and I couldn't help but laugh at how open they were. It seemed like they were talking about personal stuff, and it was getting intense. Amidst all the laughing, Laura didn't hold back from talking about her relationship with her husband while I was there. I heard her bragging to the others about my abilities and how I hadn't changed over the years. It made me realize that there was Laura, proudly talking about her husband. She even mentioned how things change in a marriage over time, but said it's normal. Then, out of nowhere, one of the ladies asked a big question. I perked up, curious to see how Laura would answer. They were like detectives, trying to figure out why Laura was acting different lately. With Laura being so open, I felt like the conversation was about to get interesting. As we waited for Laura's answer, the tension and curiosity were high. Suddenly my heart started racing, and I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Did Laura just confess something about Stan? Our Stan? Panic hit me and I leaned in closer, desperate to hear every word. My mind raced as I struggled to process this shocking news. Stan, whom I trusted and thought of as a friend, was somehow involved with my wife. It felt like the ground was disappearing beneath me, and I fought to control my feelings. Every word they said felt like a stab to my heart. The laughter and happiness that used to fill the air now felt like a cruel reminder of betrayal. My hands shook as I held the phone, my heart pounding in my chest, tears threatening to spill. Listening to this heartbreaking conversation, I felt like I had no power over my own life. I was overwhelmed with shock and sadness, wishing I could go back and undo those painful words. Suddenly, reality hit me hard. The trust I had in Laura and Stan was shattered, leaving me feeling abandoned and completely shattered. The pain was unbearable, leaving me feeling crushed and devastated. Their conversation made it clear my life would never be the same. The innocence and joy that once filled our home now seemed like they would be replaced by sadness and hopelessness. No, Bob and I have a great sex life, and he's always satisfied me. I love him and would never try anything with Stan on purpose. It just happened. Laura, you betrayed Bob. You can't be that happy in your marriage. No, you don't get it. My love for Bob means everything to me. He's not just my partner. He's my safe place, my peace, my heart, and my shelter. And yes, he fulfills me. I love him deeply. What happened with Stan was a mistake. But you said Stan is good in bed, suggesting closeness. We're trying to understand. Tell us the whole story, but remember, this stays between us. The guys would be furious with Stan, and my husband would kick me out if he knew. I'd never want to hurt him. He's so nice. But he'll never get it. Can I trust you to keep this between us? Although I couldn't hear their response, I figured they all agreed. Okay, let's not talk about this again. After Susan left Stan last month, he was devastated, completely shocked. He was planning to propose to her. When I saw him at the restaurant, we talked, and he poured his heart out, telling me everything. Girls, he was in tears. This strong, tough man was falling apart, and it broke my heart. I felt really sorry for him, sitting beside him until he calmed down. He was so sad and upset that I felt a strong urge to comfort him, almost like a mother would. Oh, come on, Laura. You're old enough to be his mom. Don't make it sound so dramatic. You felt a physical need to comfort him, not like a mother would. Well, you're right, but at the time I wasn't thinking about being physical. Anyway, he walked me to my car, thanking me for being there for him and letting him share his feelings. I just smiled and gave him a friendly kiss. That's when things changed. Before I knew it, he silently took my hand and led me to his truck parked nearby under a shady tree. I don't know why I went along with it. I was mesmerized. We ended up in the back of his car, kissing passionately like we were teenagers. Then he admitted he always found me attractive and fantasized about being with me. I was surprised and flattered by his compliments. But what I did next, I can't explain. Honestly, in that moment, I didn't think about Bob or our family. It was like I was in a trance. I undid his belt and pulled down his pants, suddenly wanting to be intimate with him. He thanked me, saying he needed it after what he'd been through, but hearing that broke my heart. Those words hurt me deeply, touching every part of my being. I shook with pain as a sense of loss overwhelmed me. Mary, Roger's wife, spoke first. "Wow, that's intense. We had no idea you were capable of that." "Me neither. I never thought I'd do something like that," added Emily, Scott's wife. "But it just happened. I think all of us girls dream about it, but it rarely becomes real. You handled it well." "I'm jealous," she continued. "So what happened next?" From Laura's tone, it was clear she realized her mistake and regretted crossing a line. "Well, when I came to my senses and realized what I'd done, I felt overwhelmed with guilt. I knew it was wrong, and Bob would never forgive me if he found out. I had to make sure it never happened again. I told Stan it was a one-time thing, and we could never do it again. I reminded him that Bob was his friend and would feel betrayed by both of us if he knew. Stan agreed, saying it was just a moment of passion and promised to keep it a secret forever." Standing there, torn apart by shock and pain, Laura's confession echoing in my head, Mary's words dealt the final blow to my fading hope, crushing the last of my illusions. I felt completely lost and empty. "So, how did you end up in bed with Stan and get your husband all worked up?" This question shattered me. Humiliated and confused, I wanted nothing more than to confront both Stan and my unfaithful wife head-on. Laura hesitated before telling me how Stan turned to her for comfort when he was feeling really low. But any momentary satisfaction she felt was overshadowed by the guilt of betraying me and causing so much pain. She sounded sad as she shared the details of what happened between her and Stan. "No, please don't see it that way. I made another dumb mistake. I messed up and should have known better," she said in a serious tone. "Stan called and asked me to lunch, but I said no because I knew we shouldn't meet alone. He said he was feeling down and just needed someone to talk to, and he felt like I was the only one who could understand. Stan offered to cook dinner if I came to his place for at least an hour. I made another huge mistake by going to his place alone. We had salads and wine and talked. After a while, he thanked me for our previous meeting, kissed me gently, and things went further. It wasn't romantic. It was just physical. I knew it was wrong, but it happened. Honestly, it was the most satisfying physical encounter I've had in years. He's been lacking for so long and is a passionate lover. It was a few hours of intense passion, but we both knew it wouldn't happen again. After I showered and got dressed, I made it clear it was a one-time thing and he shouldn't contact me. We both agreed, and that was the end of it. "So, you never saw him again after that?" "Only those 2 times. Anger surged through me and I clenched my fists tightly, trying to control the storm of emotions inside me. Laura admitting to her brief affair with Stan felt like a stab in the heart, the pain getting worse with each word she said. My world fell apart, and the life I knew was gone. I was filled with rage, yet desperate to save our relationship. I couldn't bear the betrayal, but I couldn't bear to lose her either. I felt lost and vulnerable, grappling with conflicting feelings, resentment and anger mixed with helplessness, leaving me feeling utterly confused. How could she do this? How could she betray our trust like that? Just as I searched for hope, Laura's next words hit me hard, reopening old wounds. Her casual dismissal of her actions hurt me deeply, fueling my anger and disbelief. "I know it was wrong, but it just happened," she said, making it seem like her actions were out of her control. At that moment, my anger peaked. How could she brush off her actions like that? My fury grew as I listened to her downplay her betrayal. I felt a deep sense of betrayal, not just from the physical act, but from risking our marriage for momentary pleasure. The room felt like it was closing in on me as I struggled with my anger. I wanted to scream, to lash out, but I knew it wouldn't help. The pain was overwhelming, weighing heavily on my chest. In that moment, I realized I couldn't deal with it all at once. So when Laura spoke again, I listened closely, hoping to find some hope for our future together. When Laura spoke, her voice trembled with emotion. She admitted that despite feeling guilty, she couldn't shake the memories of the intense passion she shared with Stan. These memories became a secret refuge for her, emerging during intimate moments with me. "No, never again. All I have now are beautiful memories. It's hard to say, but I use them when Bob and I are intimate. I know it's wrong, but I can't forget them now that they're all I have left. It was a heartbreaking confession. Laura's words carried a tone of sadness as she struggled with the realization that these memories of Stan would always stay with her, despite her efforts to erase them. Emily stayed quiet, but after Laura's confession, she spoke up. "Laura, I envy you so much. I love Scott, but I've often wondered what it would be like to be intimate with someone else. I don't mean to offend, but Scott is kind of small. I love him, but I'm curious to try something different just once." Mary let out a soft sigh, seeming moved by the story. "My goodness, and poor Bob remains clueless, unaware of Stan or your fantasies during intimacy. This is shocking, Laura, but you need to get your act together and forget about Stan. Bob deserves better, and I'll make sure he's taken care of. Trust me, he'll never find out, and I won't let this happen again. I promise. It was a mistake, and the guilt weighs heavily on me." Sharing the whole ordeal with someone brought some relief, along with the wine. Now, my future hung in the balance as the women chatted about me. I felt like a fool who had funded my wife's lavish lifestyle without realizing it. The spa days, country club memberships, shopping sprees, and luxurious home, all paid for by me. A mug, known as a naive husband. Laura's confession left me in disbelief, tears flowing down my face, revealing the depth of my pain. Time seemed to blur as I listened, unable to pull myself away from the painful truth. I realized I needed to step back from the situation, at least for a while. With a heavy heart, I grabbed my fishing bait and the bottle of sherry I had bought for the guys and headed back to Rosier's house. The guys were waiting for me. Despite the turmoil inside me, tears continued to fall as I drove, my mind filled with confusion and resentment. I needed time to process it all, to come to terms with the betrayal I had just discovered. I wasn't ready to confront Laura about what I had learned. The pain was too much, too overwhelming. I wanted to stick to my original plan, to get away for the weekend and find solace in solitude. But fate seemed to mock me when I realized I'd be spending those days with Stan, the one involved in the heartbreaking affair. The thought of being near him only added to my pain. I didn't know what to expect, and the uncertainty weighed heavily on me. Could I control my emotions? Could I face him without crumbling under the devastation inside me? As I drove back to Roger's house, tears continued to flow, and a deep sense of loss and pain engulfed me. The upcoming weekend felt like a dark cloud hanging over me, and I didn't know how to cope. All I knew was that I needed time to recover, to fix the broken pieces of my heart. At that moment, I felt completely alone, let down by someone I cared about and trusted. The sadness overwhelmed me, and I prayed for the strength to mend my wounded soul someday. When I got there, Roger was outside loading his Escalade. When I got closer, he noticed something wasn't right, seeing the blank look in my eyes. I wasn't ready to talk about it, but when he asked what was wrong, I managed to come up with a believable excuse. "Bob? What's the matter? You look terrible. Is everything okay?" "Sorry, Roger, just dealing with a bad headache. I need some time to relax." "Are you sure? You seem really off." "Yes, I'll be fine. Just let me sit in the front. I'll close my eyes and I'm sure I'll feel better. Plus, I wouldn't miss our yearly trip for anything. I need the break." "Sure, no problem. Why don't you go inside and unwind while we finish up? We'll leave in about 30 minutes. I'll come get you when we're ready." True to his word, 30 minutes later, I found myself in the front seat with Roger keeping an eye on me. He gave me his wife's sleep mask and a pair of noise-canceling headphones as I settled in the passenger seat, with Stan and Scott in the back. With the blindfold and headphones on, I was surrounded by darkness, limiting my senses to smell, touch, and taste, which helped me process the unexpected situation. The guys respected my need for space and offered help if I needed it. Unable to face Stan, I kept my eyes shut and thanked them for understanding. For the next 3 hours in the darkness, I sat quietly, thinking about the disaster I had just witnessed. Remembering our years together, how much I loved Laura and felt grateful for our children, Michael and Katie. She said it was a one-time mistake, that she regretted it and promised never to do it again. Forgiving and forgetting was hard for me, but her lingering thoughts about Stan haunted me, especially during intimate moments. Sadly, I think this confession marks the end of our marriage. I wondered how the cherished memories of our family could fade away. Tears clouded my vision, but I wiped them away before anyone noticed. For the first time, I felt confused and conflicted. Without answers or guidance, I was lost and unsure. And I must have fallen asleep because the next thing I remember is Roger shaking my shoulder, waking me up. "Dude, are you okay? How are you feeling?" he asked, already near the fishing hut. I remained unusually quiet for the next 2 days, blaming my headache. The guys respected my need for space as I tried not to spoil Scott and Roger's trip. During this time, I wrestled with my feelings, thinking about my life, both past and future. Although difficult, I was determined to endure. 2 days later, still struggling with uncertainty, I found myself walking along the trail toward the lake, accompanied only by Stan. Roger and Scott were supposed to meet us at the boat dock. I followed behind Stan as we made our way through the woods. As we moved along the path, Laura's words echoed in my mind, and suddenly I was overwhelmed by anger. I noticed a sizable fallen branch beside the path, roughly the size of a baseball bat. Acting on impulse, I grabbed it, feeling its weight in my hands. Looking at Stan, who was about 20 paces ahead of me, I impulsively lunged forward, lifted the heavy branch, and brought it down onto Stan's right shoulder. Originally aiming for his head, I changed my target at the last moment, hitting his collarbone instead, causing him intense pain as he fell to the ground. Standing over him, I looked down at the man who had been involved with my wife. He held his injured shoulder as I yelled, "This is for you, for being with my wife." Then, I delivered a strong kick between his legs. I hit him with all my strength, watching him writhe in pain until he passed out. After a few moments, I regained my composure, carrying Stan to a nearby tree and propping him up until he regained consciousness. When he woke up, he muttered, "What the hell?" I interrupted angrily. "Shut up. You were with her. That's it. Don't talk to me for the rest of the trip. And don't say anything to Laura about this. If you do, you'll regret it. I don't know what I'll do with her, but I don't need you to ruin it further. You've ruined my 20-year marriage. Don't ruin my revenge." "Bob, she loves you. You can't leave her. It's all my fault, and I'm truly sorry. Please, blame me, not her." "Bob, when Susan left me, Laura was there for me. It just happened, and she felt guilty afterward. Dude, don't leave her. She loves you." I hit him again. "I told you to shut up." At that moment, Roger and Scott saw me delivering another blow, and they rushed over to pull me away. "Bob, what's happening? What happened?" Roger helped me up, and we headed back to the cabin. For the next hour, Stan nursed his injured shoulder, expressing anger at my surprise attack and calling the fight unfair. I glared at him and told him to be quiet. Then, I played the recording for everyone to hear. After the recording ended, Roger expressed his anger at his nephew. "You're a damn fool. You betrayed our friend, the man who gave you a job when you were down and out and trusted you. You had an affair with one of our wives and had the nerve to come on this trip with us. And you're still upset that Bob hurt you? You should be grateful we didn't throw you into the lake. We don't want to see or hear from you for the rest of this trip. Not a word. Consider yourself lucky to be alive," Roger exclaimed. Scott added, "Guys, there's another issue with this recording. You heard what my wife and Mary said, how interested they were in it. All our wives seem okay with Laura's cheating and are keeping it quiet. I don't know about you, but I have a problem with that. When I get back, Emily and I are going to have a serious conversation." "Yeah, you're right, Scott. It's disrespectful to all of us." He turned to Stan, glaring at him, and remarked, "Look at the mess you've made, idiot. You ruined one marriage and possibly 2 more. Maybe we should leave you stranded in the middle of the lake." Stan simply hung his head, remaining silent. Realizing the seriousness of what happened, I spoke up. "Guys, I agree they're all involved. But please, give me a few days before we do anything. I'll share the recording with you, but I need to talk to Laura first before she finds out I know everything because of this idiot. I don't think I can stay with her. Every time we're intimate, I'll know she's thinking about him. Knowing that, I can't keep our marriage going. I'll probably file for divorce. I just need a few days to figure everything out." Roger fixed a stern look at his nephew, Stan. "You're awful. You won't say a word to Laura or the other wives unless we say so. If you even hint to Laura about what's coming, we'll make your life miserable. And if you disappear, none of us will care. You're family, but that's the only reason I didn't leave you out in the woods. You disrespected our friend, a good man. Just because you couldn't handle your own relationship, you went and got involved with someone else's wife. You're garbage, and it's shameful to say you're my sister's child. Not a word. Got it?" Stan nodded silently in agreement. During the trip, nobody spoke to him, and to his credit, he kept to himself, avoiding any trouble. Now, the only thing left was what to do about Laura. On the way home, I thought about the situation, considering how Laura might react if our roles were reversed. Then I had an idea. I had a plan. Despite my anger, I still cared for Laura deep down, and I might be able to forgive a one-time mistake with Stan. but the thought of her fantasizing about it while being intimate with me was unbearable. So I decided to let Laura decide her own fate. My plan was to bring up infidelity, suggesting that I was having an affair myself, and see how she reacted and what she did afterward. If she could forgive one mistake, then I could too for her sake, and we could move forward. Whatever her response, that's how I would feel about her and our marriage. The solution to her mistake would be up to her. Arriving home and pulling into the driveway, my anger churned just below the surface. Despite feeling gloomy, it was time to confront Laura, and I had to push my emotions aside and act as if everything was normal. A difficult task. Stepping into the house, Laura greeted me warmly, looking sharp, and hugged and kissed me, a gesture I knew I would miss if things went south. Although I was still angry, I couldn't ignore my lingering affection for the woman who betrayed me. Thoughts of her betrayal fueled my anger, but the smell of her perfume and the delicious dinner she made helped calm me down. We had a nice meal, during which I kept my composure while she talked about the past few days. It was still early when she led me to the bedroom, expressing her desire for affection and closeness. Despite her obvious desire for intimacy, I couldn't bring myself to fully engage. As she eagerly undressed and pulled me towards her on the bed, I hesitated for the first time in our relationship. Laura looked at me in confusion, wondering what had gone wrong. Putting my phone on the nightstand, I started recording audio to ensure there would be no misunderstandings during our conversation. "Laura, I need to confess something important. There's someone else, and it's been bothering me inside. I can't keep it to myself any longer," I said seriously. Startled, she looked at me and asked, "What do you mean, someone else?" "I'm truly sorry. It only happened a few times, but the passion was so intense that I can't forget it," I admitted. Her fiery temper flared up just as I expected. "You're terrible. You had intimacy with someone else, and now you can't stop thinking about it," she accused. "Baby, it was only physical. I still love you," I assured her, careful not to reveal the full extent of my betrayal. "I can't believe this. What do you mean you can't stop thinking about it?" she pressed. "Well, honestly, it was the most incredible experience of my life, and I can't seem to shake it," I replied cautiously, echoing her own words from the recording. Her tears started flowing, clearly hurt by the idea of betrayal. Was I harsh and rude? Maybe. But the truth is, I'm the one who's been wronged, not her. I'll let her have her say, I thought to myself. Suddenly, she exploded in anger, yelling, "Forget you! Pack your bags and leave! I won't stay married to a cheater, got it? My father cheated on my mother, leaving her broken. I won't let you do that to me. Go now! I'll divorce you and make you pay for it." As she berated me, listing all she had done for our family, I almost chuckled at her reaction. She wouldn't be so confident in a few moments, that was for sure. "Laura, it was just a physical encounter. Only twice. Come on, it was just once. Are you really thinking about divorce over this? Think about it. It was just physical intimacy. Are you serious? I can't trust you. And yes, I want a divorce. And you'll pay a hefty price. You do know our state recently passed a law favoring the victim of infidelity, right? I'll use this law to divorce you and take everything you own. I might even take your business and leave you as one of the guys at the pool. I never thought you could be so cold and heartless." As I've said, there was no emotional connection, just physical closeness. "Is this really what you want? Are you sure?" "Reconciliation is out of the question. Maybe we could try counseling. I tried to save our marriage, but it seems you've decided to end it without realizing it." "No, it's over between us. I won't be married to a cheater. Just pack your things and go. Stay with Roger or get a hotel room, but I don't want to see you anymore. You'll hear from my lawyer." I couldn't help but smile. She unknowingly made her decision. With malice in her voice, she demanded, "Why are you smiling like that?" "Well, honey, you've just made my choice easier," I replied. "What do you mean?" she asked. "Let me show you something. Get dressed and come with me," I instructed. Though still angry, she reluctantly followed me to the workshop. I positioned her by the window where I had made the recording. Instructing her to stay there, I stepped outside, connected my Bluetooth speakers to my iPhone, and returned. Despite her anger, confusion washed over her face as I pressed play on my phone. My wife's confusion deepened upon hearing her own voice, yet she remained attentive. Her expression then shifted to shock as she absorbed the entire conversation. Tears streamed down her face as she collapsed to her knees, the weight of realization hitting her hard. "Darling, I'm so sorry." "How did you hear that?" she asked, her tears flowing. "Well, it's not really important, but I had to return for something I forgot." I didn't want to interrupt your gathering, so I slipped in through the back door to avoid disturbing your little party. That's when I overheard your conversation about me in bed. I wrote it down intending to share and tease you later. But when you confessed to your affair with Stan, I stayed and transcribed everything," I explained. "Sweetheart, you heard me say it was just a one-time thing, just physical involvement. You must understand, there's nothing between us. I need your forgiveness. I'm truly sorry, but you weren't meant to find out." Amidst our tears and anguish, Laura's words of remorse broke through the pain. Her voice trembled with genuine sorrow and regret as she begged for forgiveness, exposing her vulnerability. Her plea touched my heart, revealing the depth of our love buried beneath the hurt and anger. However, I couldn't give in to her tears and pleas. My tone turned cold and distant as I revealed the painful truth to Laura. The resentment ran deep, and I couldn't shake the sense of betrayal that consumed me. Her confession about fantasizing about Stan during our intimate moments shattered the remaining trust between us. "I heard it all, Laura," I replied, the warmth vanishing from my voice. "You're right. But you forgot to mention that you confessed to dreaming about him while we were together. How can I just overlook that?" For the first time in our marriage, her tears didn't move me. Yet her words pierced my heart deeply. The thought of her fantasizing about another man while I poured my love into our relationship was unbearable. "I can't ignore this, Laura," I continued, bitterness in my words. "And I can't ignore that you were never going to tell me and kept me in the dark. You've broken something inside me, and I don't know if I can trust you again. How can I believe in your love if you're dreaming of someone else?" I burned with anger, feeling like I deserved better. The thought of being with someone who couldn't fully commit was crushing. "I can't just act like everything's okay," I said firmly. "Thinking about another man while we're together is enough for me to consider separating. I don't know how to love you again, knowing you're thinking of him instead of me during our intimate moments." The pain in my heart was unbearable, and fixing our relationship felt hopeless. I couldn't forgive her for hurting me so deeply. Silence filled the room after my words hung heavily. There was nothing more to say. The truth had been spoken, and the pain was too deep to ignore. It was clear that the damage done was beyond repair, and I couldn't see a way to forgive. In that moment, I realized our love was shattered forever, and the future we once imagined was now just a distant memory. Though it hurt, I had to accept this truth if I wanted to heal and move forward, even if it meant doing it without her. No, that's not what I meant. You don't understand. I love you and don't want him," I pleaded with Laura, hoping she'd understand the pain she caused. "Bob, you need to let me explain everything. Don't give up on me," Laura responded desperately. As I confronted her, anguish and betrayal laced my words. "I heard what you said on that recording, and the thought of him in our bed is too much for me. I never thought you'd betray my love and hurt me like this. If I'm wrong, look me in the eye and tell me it's not true. Look at me and say you weren't thinking of him when we were intimate." But she couldn't meet my gaze, and the truth hung heavy in the air. "Yes, you can't even look at me," I sighed, feeling defeated. "You've destroyed everything, Laura," I muttered, feeling crushed by her betrayal. "Once I divorce you, you can be with him, and then you won't have to dream about him anymore." Tears rolled down her face as Laura barely whispered, "You can't leave me. I love you. Please let me fix this." But the wounds were too deep, the trust too broken to repair. "This is ironic. Now you want my forgiveness? How surprising. I'll fix everything. I love you." "I'm sorry," I echoed her words bitterly, struggling to understand how everything fell apart so quickly. "What makes you think I'll stay with you after what you did? Do I look like someone who would forgive his cheating wife's betrayal?" I asked, my voice shaking with a mix of anger and sadness. Laura's betrayal deeply wounded me, leaving me exposed and fragile. As I spoke to Laura, my voice shook with a mix of feelings. "I've been in turmoil for the past 3 days. Part of me wanted to forgive you and repair our relationship. I thought I could move past this one-time mistake, but everything changed when I heard what you told your friends." Every word felt like a stab in my heart, painfully reminding me of the love I had lost. The ache in my heart was real, impossible to hide in my voice. Hearing her casually discuss intimate details of her thoughts during our moments together shattered the last shreds of trust I had. Tears welled up in my eyes as I struggled to comprehend how quickly everything fell apart. Throughout our marriage, I never cried openly, but now I couldn't contain my pain. I felt completely embarrassed. As I spoke, the weight of my emotions threatened to engulf me. Laura, I continued, tears streaming down my face and my voice shaking. These women, your friends, now see me as an oblivious husband. It feels like living a lie, not knowing what was going on behind my back, knowing they were mocking me and labeling me as ignorant, shattered whatever self-respect I had left. The ensuing silence was heavy, each moment filled with our emotions. The future felt uncertain and I didn't know what lay ahead. But one thing was clear, I couldn't endure a marriage tainted by betrayal and doubt. As reality sank in, I knew a decision had to be made. Since I couldn't decide our future, I came up with a plan. I'll reveal the details of the affair, and how we move forward will depend on your reaction. The brilliance of my plan was that the fate of our marriage rested entirely on you. However, even as I outlined my strategy, the sense of betrayal hung in the air. But now this is what you can expect from me. I won't kick you out like you did to me, but you'll move to the guest room because I can't share our bed with you. I'll consult with a lawyer and pursue charges of infidelity. I'm eager to use that new divorce law you've been so eager to share, fueled by all your anger. As Laura begged for forgiveness, the weight of our 2 decades together weighed heavily on me. What about our 20 years and our kids? I asked, my voice thick with emotion. The pain of betrayal was immense, and I felt keenly the impact of her actions on our entire family. I know it won't be easy, I said, my voice trembling with resentment and anger. But I can't overlook what you've done, Laura. You didn't consider our children or our years of commitment when you chose to betray me and our family. Her betrayal deeply wounded me, creating an intense pain in my heart. The trust we had is shattered, and I'm unsure how to move forward. What you did is unforgivable, I stated firmly, and you'll face the consequences, just as you were ready to hold me accountable for my mistakes. Now gather your things from our bedroom. With a heavy heart, I led her away, separating her physically from the space that once symbolized our love. The room where we shared precious moments now carries the stain of betrayal. That night, I couldn't find comfort in sleep, mourning the end of our marriage. I loved her deeply. Knowing she fantasized about another man during our most intimate moments weighed heavily on me. Some men can forgive such indiscretions, but I couldn't find the strength to do so. The pain was too much, and the trust was shattered. Despite my love for her, her words were an insurmountable barrier. Our dream of a future together was shattered, leaving an unfillable void. I had to honor my own feelings, even if it meant letting go of the woman I cherished. Before she left, I looked at the woman I had loved for 20 years and said, "You've broken my heart. Today, I've lost someone who didn't appreciate me. But today, you've lost someone who was willing to do anything for you." The echoes of her pleas for forgiveness stayed with me as I said goodbye to Laura for the last time. Bob faced the heartbreaking task of telling his children, dreading the moment when he would share the devastating news. His son Michael offered understanding and unwavering support, providing some comfort amid the turmoil. However, Katie's reaction crushed his hopes. Her anger, reflecting her close bond with her mother, hurt him deeply. Bob tried hard to mend their relationship, but it felt impossible. In a rare show of strength, Laura took the initiative to talk to Katie, admitting her mistake and urging her not to blame her father, who had done nothing wrong. The children's lives were changed forever, but Bob remained determined to secure their future, promising to fund their college education and provide for them. The confrontation between the couples was filled with betrayal and sadness. Mary felt her heart break when she heard about Laura's divorce, sensing their long friendship falling apart. Roger was furious, confused by his wife's keeping quiet about her affair, and even seeming to support it. The revelation from the tape was devastating, making him question everything. The hurt was too deep to ignore, and it seemed like their strong bond was broken beyond repair. The following days were full of strong emotions and sadness as they faced the consequences of their actions. The close group of friends now struggles with the painful reality of betrayal and lost trust. Mary, devastated by Laura's divorce, confronted her husband Roger, realizing her role in hiding the affair. She felt awful as she understood the impact of her actions. Roger, furious, demanded answers about why she covered up for Laura and hurt their closest friend, leaving her speechless and full of regret. A similar scene played out at Scott's house when Emily heard incriminating words about her husband on the tape. Overwhelmed with shame, Scott decided to leave, leaving Emily in tears and regret. Meanwhile, tension grew in Bob and Laura's home as Bob served divorce papers. Despite Laura's apologies and understanding of her mistake, Bob remained silent. His pain was deep, knowing that reconciliation was impossible due to the immense hurt and broken trust. Our case went to Judge Montresor, making the divorce process tough as Laura tried desperately to save her marriage. During the trial, Stan confessed his guilt for the damage he caused. He was warned to tell the truth or face the consequences from his husbands. His testimony sounded more like an admission of guilt and an apology to those affected. Tears filled the courtroom as the final chapter of the marriage unfolded. Laura felt her heart sink as she listened to the affair on the recording. The judge's decision was quick. Bob received a large part of their assets and was denied spousal support according to new laws. Laura painfully accepted that her actions led to the end of her marriage. Her once exciting relationship with Stan now felt like a distant memory, overshadowed by the pain and regret she caused Bob. Their future, once bright, now lay in ruins, burdened by her betrayal. Faced with the harsh truth, Laura realized she not only lost her marriage, but also her sense of security and the life she cherished. The aftermath of their choices changed the lives of these friends forever, leaving behind sadness, regret, and broken trust. As they faced their past mistakes, Bob offered Laura a place to stay in their guest room, aiming to help her get back on her feet. The large house made it easier for them to live together without too much tension. Bob threw himself into work to keep his mind busy, often coming home late to avoid running into Laura. Despite Laura's efforts to reconcile with Bob, he remained firm in his decision to keep his distance. He began dating Becky, his secretary, who happily brought joy to his life. Despite their age difference, Becky admired Bob and was committed to him. She couldn't understand Laura's actions, but felt fortunate to be with Bob. Becky was determined to show Bob her loyalty and love. The weight of the past few months took a toll on Laura. Seeing Becky move in and take her place in Bob's life was a constant reminder of what she had lost. Watching Bob and Becky together hurt Laura deeply, feeling each moment between them like a stab in the heart. Jealousy consumed her, and she regretted her choices that led to this situation. Their once happy home now filled Laura with sorrow as she watched Bob and Becky grow closer. The bed they shared now belonged to Bob and Becky, adding to Laura's pain as she faced the consequences of her decisions. Feeling alone and scared, Laura struggled to cope with her emotions. She had no job prospects and feared a future without Bob, adding to her distress. She knew she had to confront her reality and rebuild her life, even though it seemed daunting. Despite the challenges ahead, Laura held on to hope that she could find peace and happiness again, even if it meant letting go of her dreams with Bob. Meanwhile, at Bob's workplace, Stan's role in Bob's divorce caused him to be ostracized by his coworkers. He felt like an outcast, which affected his work performance, leading to complaints and financial losses. Stan realized he couldn't stay and decided to leave. Stan took a brave step by starting his own business and quickly gained many clients. However, Bob's legal team pointed out that Stan had broken a non-compete agreement they had. Despite not fully understanding the legal details, Stan continued to grow his business. Bob's lawyer advised patience, suggesting they wait to gather evidence. Within 10 months, Stan built up over 100 clients, showing impressive growth in his business. At first, Stan enjoyed his success, but it didn't last long. He faced a lawsuit demanding $1 million settlement, accusing him of causing financial harm and breaking the non-compete agreement. In the midst of the legal trouble, Bob, still hurt by Stan's actions, sought revenge. He didn't just want money, he wanted Stan to pay for his part in Bob's marriage falling apart and losing loyal clients. After the legal battle ended, Stan suffered severe consequences. Bob won the case and took over Stan's thriving business, pushing Stan into bankruptcy. The career he worked hard to build and the chance of owning part of Bob's multi-million-dollar business vanished. Stan was left broke and emotionally wounded. Without formal education, he had to resort to tough manual labor to get by. The harsh results of his actions taught Stan a lesson he'd never forget: not to interfere in someone else's marriage and not to betray trust. Scott and Roger's wives also realized the danger they narrowly avoided, learning from Laura's mistake. This made them rethink their relationships and commit to rebuilding trust and communication. Over time, they strengthened their marriages, rediscovering love and forgiveness. Though they distanced themselves from Laura and Bob, they held on to memories of their past friendship. Laura's life turned grim as she dealt with the aftermath of her failed marriage. Working as a dental office receptionist gave her some stability, but it couldn't replace the happiness she once had with Bob. Living in a modest apartment, she felt the weight of loneliness and regret every day, trying her best to move on. Starting a new relationship with an older man from work provided some comfort, But it didn't compare to the love she lost with Bob. The joy she used to feel now felt like a distant memory. Her past mistakes haunted her constantly, a constant reminder she couldn't shake off. In quiet moments, she wondered what could have been, wishing she had made different choices to save her life with Bob. However, she had to accept that she had let go of something special and irreplaceable. The bright future she once envisioned now seemed overshadowed by darkness. A deep sadness and longing for what she lost consumed her. While Bob missed Laura greatly, his void was filled by Becky, who made it her mission to be the perfect partner. Bob was attracted to her youthful energy and enthusiasm, and they got married a year later. Eventually, Michael and Katie welcomed a half-brother into the family a year after that.
Story 4.
I step out onto our perfectly manicured lawn, taking in the crisp morning air of our Charlotte suburb. The sprinklers hiss softly, creating a misty halo around the neatly trimmed hedges. This is my little slice of paradise, the life I've worked so hard to build. Daddy, Daddy, Emma's voice rings out from the porch. Can we have pancakes for breakfast? I turn to see my 10-year-old daughter's eager face, her younger brother Jacob peeking out from behind her. Sure thing, sweetheart. Let's get the griddle fired up. As I head back inside, I catch a glimpse of our neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, waving from across the street. I return the gesture with a smile. To them, we must look like the perfect family, successful careers, beautiful home, 2 adorable kids. And most days, I believe it too. Inside, Isabella is already dressed for work, her tailored suit crisp and immaculate. She barely looks up from her phone as I enter. "Morning, honey," I say, leaning in for a kiss. She turns her head slightly, my lips grazing her cheek instead. "Morning, Jack," she replies, distracted. "I've got an early meeting. I'll grab something on the way." Before I can respond, she's grabbing her briefcase and heading for the door. "Don't forget, I have a late client dinner tonight. Don't wait up." The door clicks shut behind her, and I'm left standing in the kitchen, the silence broken only by the excited chatter of Emma and Jacob as they debate pancake toppings. I shake off the nagging feeling in my gut and focus on making breakfast for my kids. As I flip pancakes and pour orange juice, I can't help but think about how different my upbringing was. My dad, a construction worker, taught me the value of hard work and loyalty. We didn't have much, but we had each other. Now, I've given my own family everything I never had growing up. Later that evening, as I'm tucking the kids into bed, I hear Emma whispering to Jacob. "Did you see the man who visited Mommy at work?" she asks, her voice barely audible. I freeze, my hand on the doorknob. My heart starts to race, but I force myself to stay calm. Kids say all sorts of things, right? It doesn't have to mean anything. But as I lie in bed that night, waiting for Isabella to return, doubts gnaw at me. The late nights at work, the constant attachment to her phone, the emotional distance that's been growing between us, it all starts to take on a sinister shape in my mind. When I hear the front door open well past midnight, I sit up in bed. Isabella slips into the room, the scent of expensive perfume lingering in the air. "How was your meeting?" I ask, trying to keep my voice neutral. She startles slightly, not expecting me to be awake. "Oh, it was fine. Just a lot of boring legal talk. You didn't have to wait up." I take a deep breath. "Isabella, is there something you want to tell me?" She pauses in the middle of taking off her earrings. "What do you mean? Is there someone else?" The words hang in the air between us, heavy and accusing. Isabella's face hardens, her lawyer's mask slipping into place. "What are you talking about, Jack?" she says, her voice cool and collected. "Are you seriously accusing me of cheating?" I backpedal, suddenly unsure. "No, You've been so distant lately, and with all these late nights." Isabella's eyes flash with anger. "So because I'm successful and dedicated to my career, I must be having an affair? Is that it? God, Jack, I can't believe you'd be so paranoid and untrusting. Maybe you should look at your own insecurities instead of throwing around baseless accusations." Her words sting, and I find myself apologizing, feeling guilty for even bringing it up. But as Isabella turns away from me, busying herself with her nightly routine, I can't shake the feeling that something isn't right. The next few weeks pass in a blur of forced normalcy. I throw myself into work and the kids, trying to ignore the growing pit in my stomach. Isabella seems to be making an effort too, suggesting we plan a family vacation for the upcoming spring break. That sounds great, I say, mustering up enthusiasm. The kids would love that. She smiles, but it doesn't quite reach her eyes. Perfect. I'll start looking into options. One sunny Saturday afternoon, the doorbell rings. I open it to find Scott, my best friend since childhood, standing there with a six-pack of beer and a grin. "Thought you might need some guy time," he says, holding up the beers. I can't help but smile. Scott has always had a knack for showing up when I need him most. "Come on in, man. You're a lifesaver." We settle into the backyard, watching Emma and Jacob play on the swing set I built last summer. Scott's wife, Lauren, arrives a little later with their kids in tow, and soon the yard is filled with the sound of laughter and playful shrieks. As the kids run around, Scott and I sit on the patio, nursing our beers. "Everything okay, Jack?" Scott asks, his voice low. "You seem, I don't know, off somehow." I hesitate, not sure how much to say. Scott and I have been through everything together, but voicing my suspicions out loud feels like crossing a line I can't come back from. "I don't know, man," I finally admit. "Things with Isabella, they're just not the same. I can't put my finger on it, but something feels wrong." Scott nods, his expression serious. "Have you talked to her about it?" I laugh bitterly. "Tried. Didn't go so well. She turned it all around on me, made me feel like I was the one with the problem." "That's rough, buddy," Scott says, clapping me on the shoulder. "But hey, you've got us. Whatever's going on, we've got your back." His words are comforting, but they can't completely erase the nagging doubt in my mind. As the afternoon wears on and our families mingle, I find myself watching Isabella. She's laughing with Lauren, looking every bit the perfect hostess. But I notice how often she checks her phone, how her smile falters when she thinks no one is looking. That night, after everyone has gone home and the kids are in bed, I'm cleaning up in the kitchen when I stumble upon a receipt that's fallen behind the counter. It's for a restaurant I've never heard of, some high-end place downtown. The total makes my eyes widen. $200 for lunch? I'm about to confront Isabella about it when my eye catches on the date. It was for a day last week when she told me she was in court all day. The doubt that's been simmering for weeks suddenly boils over. I spend the next few days in a haze, going through the motions at work and at home while my mind races. I start paying more attention, noticing little things, how Isabella always keeps her phone face down, the way she steps out of the room to take certain calls, the vague explanations for her whereabouts that don't quite add up. It all comes to a head on a Tuesday evening. I'm putting the kids to bed, my mind elsewhere, when Emma's innocent question snaps me back to reality. "Daddy, why does Mommy's friend from work send her flowers?" My blood runs cold. "What friend, sweetie?" Emma shrugs, already half asleep. "The tall man with the nice suit. He came to Mommy's office with flowers last week when I was there after school." I tuck her in mechanically, my mind reeling. When I get back downstairs, Isabella is on the couch, engrossed in her phone. The sight of her, so casual, so unaware of the turmoil inside me, makes something snap. "Who's Bryce?" I ask, my voice deceptively calm. Isabella's head snaps up, her eyes wide with surprise and, "Is that fear?" "What?" I hold up her phone, which I'd grabbed from the coffee table. A text notification is visible on the screen. "Bryce, can't wait for dinner tomorrow. Same place." The color drains from Isabella's face. For a moment, she looks like she's going to deny it, but then her shoulders slump in defeat. "Jack, she starts, but I cut her off. "Don't," I say, my voice hard. "Don't you dare lie to me again. How long has this been going on?" Isabella's eyes fill with tears. "It's not what you think. Bryce is just a client. A client who sends you flowers? Who takes you to expensive lunches when you're supposed to be in court?" My voice is rising now, and I struggle to keep it down for the kids' sake. "I'm sorry," she whispers, but the words ring hollow. I laugh bitterly. "You're sorry you got caught, you mean?" We stay up most of the night, alternating between heated arguments and tense silences. Isabella tries to explain, to justify, but with each word, I feel the life we've built crumbling around me. As the first light of dawn creeps through the windows, I make a decision. I won't be the victim in this story. I won't let Isabella's betrayal destroy everything I've worked for. "I want you out," I tell her, my voice flat. "Today. I'll tell the kids you have a work trip or something, but I want you gone by the time I get home from work. Isabella starts to protest, but the look in my eyes must convince her it's pointless. She nods, defeated, and retreats upstairs to pack. As I hear her moving around in our bedroom, soon to be my bedroom, I sit at the kitchen table, my mind racing. The pain and anger coursing through me are almost overwhelming. But beneath it all, a plan begins to form. Isabella thinks she's won, that she can discard our family for her new life with Bryce. But she has no idea what's coming. I'm going to take everything from her, just like she's taken everything from me. This is just the beginning. Isabella wanted to play with fire? Well, now she's going to get burned. The house feels empty without Isabella, but I push the loneliness aside. There's work to be done. Daddy, when is Mommy coming back from her trip? Emma asks over breakfast, her eyes wide with innocence. I force a smile. Soon, sweetheart. She's just very busy with work right now. Jacob looks up from his cereal. But why didn't she say goodbye? The question stings, but I keep my voice steady. Sometimes grown-ups have to leave quickly for work. But hey, how about we plan something fun for this weekend? Just the three of us? Their faces light up, and for a moment, the weight on my chest lightens. But as soon as I drop them off at school, the mask falls away. It's time to put my plan into action. My first stop is the bank. I withdraw a significant amount from our joint accounts, my hands shaking slightly as I sign the papers. The teller gives me an odd look. "Big purchase plan, Mr. Dalton?" she asks cheerfully. I nod, mustering a smile. "Just some home renovations." Next, I head to my office. My colleague, Mike, raises an eyebrow as I settle at my desk. "Everything okay, Jack? You look like you've seen a ghost." I consider brushing him off, but something in his concerned expression makes me pause. "Actually, Mike, things aren't great. Isabella and we're separating." Mike's eyes widen. "Shit, man. I'm sorry. Is there anything I can do?" I shake my head. "Thanks, but I've got it under control. Just if anyone asks, I'm working on the Peterson project from home for the next few days, okay?" He nods, understanding in his eyes. "You got it, buddy. Take care of yourself." As soon as I'm home, I start making calls. First, to a divorce attorney recommended by a friend, then to a real estate agent about quietly listing our house. With each call, each decision, I feel a strange mix of pain and satisfaction. Isabella has no idea what's coming. Over the next few days, I play the role of the oblivious husband perfectly. I even call Isabella, keeping my voice light as I ask about her business trip. "Oh, it's going well," she says, a hint of hesitation in her voice. "How are the kids?" "They miss you," I reply, letting a touch of guilt creep into my tone. "We all do. When do you think you'll be back?" There's a pause on the other end. "I'm not sure yet. This case is complicated. I'll let you know as soon as I can." "Of course," I say, my free hand clenching into a fist. "Take care, Isabella." As soon as I hang up, I pull out my laptop. Time to find out who this Bryce character really is. It doesn't take long to uncover the basics. Bryce Anderson, 40, real estate developer. His company's website shows a man with a practiced smile and carefully styled hair. Successful, charming, everything Isabella seems to want now. I dig deeper, looking for any weakness, any chink in his armor. Financial records, business dealings, anything I can use. As I work, a plan begins to form in my mind. Isabella thinks she's starting a new life with Bryce. I'll make sure it comes crashing down around her. A week passes, then two. I keep up appearances, taking the kids to school, going to work, even planning that family vacation. But every spare moment is dedicated to my revenge. One sunny afternoon, I decide it's time to confront the truth head-on. I drop the kids off at Scott's place, telling him I have some errands to run. "Everything okay, Jack?" Scott asks, concern evident in his voice. I force a smile. "Yeah, just some stuff I need to take care of. Mind if the kids stay for dinner?" Scott nods, but I can see the worry in his eyes. "No problem. You know you can talk to me if you need to, right?" "I know," I say, clapping him on the shoulder. "Thanks, man." As I drive downtown, my heart races. I park across the street from the upscale restaurant where I know Isabella and Bryce have a standing lunch date. Sure enough, at precisely 1 p.m., a sleek black car pulls up and Bryce steps out, opening the door for Isabella. My breath catches in my throat. She looks beautiful, radiant even, in a way I haven't seen in years. They walk into the restaurant hand in hand, laughing at some private joke. I sit there for what feels like hours, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turn white. When they finally emerge, I grab my phone and start taking pictures. Isabella's smiling face, Bryce's hand on the small of her back, their intimate embrace before getting into the car. Each click of the camera feels like a knife in my heart, but I force myself to continue. This is evidence. This is ammunition. That evening, I'm waiting when Isabella comes home. She freezes in the doorway, her eyes widening as she takes in my expression. "Jack," she starts, but I cut her off. "How was your business trip, Isabella?" I ask, my voice deceptively calm. She hesitates, clearly caught off guard. "It was productive. I'm sorry I was gone so long. Where are the kids?" "At Scott's," I reply. "I thought we needed some time to talk." Isabella's face pales. "Jack, what's going on?" Without a word, I pull out my phone and slide it across the table to her. On the screen is a photo of her and Bryce, caught in a passionate kiss outside the restaurant. "Care to explain?" I ask, my voice hard. Isabella stares at the photo, her mouth opening and closing soundlessly. Finally, she looks up at me, tears in her eyes. "Jack, I'm so sorry. I never meant for this to happen. It just did." I laugh bitterly. "It just happened? What? You tripped and fell into his arms?" "No, of course not," she says, her voice pleading. "It's complicated. I love you, Jack. I love our family. But with Bryce, I feel alive." I finish for her. "Excited? Everything you don't feel with me anymore?" She nods miserably. "I didn't want to hurt you. I thought I could figure things out without anyone getting hurt." "Well, you thought wrong," I say, standing up. "I want you out, Isabella. Tonight. Go to your precious Bryce. I'm sure he'll be happy to take you in." Isabella's eyes widen in panic. "Jack, please. We can work this out. What about the kids?" "You should have thought about the kids before you decided to throw our family away," I snap. "Don't worry. I'll take care of them. Like I always have." She starts to protest, but I hold up a hand. "Save it, Isabella. Your things are already packed. I'll have them sent to Bryce's place tomorrow." As Isabella sobs, gathering her purse and car keys, I feel a twisted sense of satisfaction. This is just the beginning of my revenge. The next few weeks are a blur of activity. I file for divorce, making sure Isabella gets served with the papers at her office for maximum embarrassment. I sell our family home, finding a smaller place for me and the kids. Throughout it all, I maintain a facade of calm for Emma and Jacob, assuring them that everything will be okay. One evening, as I'm going through some paperwork, my phone rings. It's Scott. "Hey man," he says, his voice hesitant. "I just ran into Isabella at the grocery store. She looked rough. What's going on?" I sigh, running a hand through my hair. "It's over, Scott. She's been having an affair." There's a long pause on the other end. "Shit, Jack. I'm so sorry. Why didn't you tell me?" "I don't know, I admit. I guess I was ashamed, angry. I wanted to handle it on my own." "You don't have to," Scott says firmly. "We're here for you, man. All of us. Whatever you need." His words bring a lump to my throat. "Thanks, Scott. That means a lot." After we hang up, I sit in silence for a long moment. Then I pull out my laptop and get back to work. Isabella might have her new life with Bryce, but I'm going to make sure it's built on quicksand. Days turn into weeks. I throw myself into my new role as a single dad, determined to give Emma and Jacob the stability they need. But every night, after they're asleep, I work on my plan. I uncover some questionable business dealings in Bryce's past. Nothing illegal, but definitely unethical. I anonymously tip off a few of his competitors and some investigative journalists. It's a small thing, but I know it will cause ripples. Isabella tries to reach out several times, leaving tearful voicemails and sending pleading texts. I ignore them all. She made her choice. One sunny Saturday, I take the kids to the park. As we're playing on the swings, I spot a familiar figure approaching. It's Isabella, looking nervous and out of place. "Mommy!" Emma shouts, running towards her. Jacob follows more slowly, uncertainty on his little face. I stand back, watching as Isabella hugs our children, tears streaming down her face. After a few moments, she looks up at me, her expression a mix of guilt and longing. "Can we talk?" she asks softly. I nod curtly. "Kids, why don't you go play on the jungle gym for a bit? Mommy and I need to have a grown-up conversation." As soon as they're out of earshot, Isabella turns to me. "Jack, I've made a terrible mistake. I miss you. I miss our family. Can't we try to work things out?" I look at her, taking in the dark circles under her eyes, the trembling of her hands. For a moment, I feel a flicker of the love we once shared. But then I remember the photos, the lies, the betrayal. "No, Isabella," I say firmly. "We can't. You made your choice. Now you have to live with it." "But what about the kids?" she pleads. "They need their mother." I shake my head. "You should have thought about that before. I'm not going to keep you from seeing them, but things can never go back to how they were." As Isabella breaks down in tears, I feel a mix of satisfaction and sadness. This is what I wanted, isn't it? To see her suffer like I have? But as I watch our children playing happily, oblivious to the drama unfolding, I wonder if the price of revenge is too high. That night, after putting the kids to bed, I sit on the porch of our new house, nursing a beer. The neighborhood is quiet, so different from our old suburban paradise. As I look up at the stars, I can't help but wonder what the future holds. My phone buzzes with a text. It's from an unknown number, but I know immediately who it's from. "I know what you're doing. It won't work, B." I smile grimly, deleting the message. Bryce has no idea what's coming. This is just the beginning of the firestorm I'm about to unleash. As I head back inside, I catch sight of a family photo hanging on the wall. It was taken last Christmas, all of us smiling and happy. For a moment, I feel a pang of regret. But then I remember Isabella's betrayal, the lies, the pain she's caused our children. No, there's no going back now. The fires of betrayal have been lit, and I'm going to make sure they burn everything to the ground. The weeks blur into months. I watch from afar as Isabella's new life with Bryce begins to unravel. My anonymous tips have done their job. Bryce's business dealings are under scrutiny, and I can see the strain it's putting on their relationship. One crisp autumn morning, I'm having coffee on the porch when my phone rings. It's Isabella. "Jack," she says, her voice trembling. "Can we talk?" I consider ignoring her, but curiosity gets the better of me. "What is it, Isabella?" It's Bryce," she says, choking back a sob. "He's not who I thought he was. He's controlling, possessive. I think I've made a terrible mistake." I feel a twisted sense of satisfaction, but I keep my voice neutral. "That's not my problem anymore, Isabella." "I know," she whispers, "but I miss you. I miss the kids. I was wondering if maybe—" "No," I cut her off firmly. "You made your choice. Now you have to live with it." I hang up, my hand shaking slightly. Part of me wants to gloat, to revel in her misery. But another part, a part one thought was long dead, aches for her. Later that day, I'm at the park with Emma and Jacob when I spot a familiar figure approaching. It's Bryce, looking decidedly less polished than in his company headshots. "Jack," he calls out, his voice tight with forced politeness. "Can I have a word?" I turn to the kids. "Why don't you two go play on the swings for a bit? I need to talk to this man." Once they're out of earshot, Bryce's facade crumbles. "What the hell are you playing at?" he hisses. I raise an eyebrow, feigning innocence. "I'm not sure what you mean." "Don't play dumb," he snaps. "The anonymous tips about my business dealings, the calls to my investors. I know it's you." I shrug. "Sounds like you've got some problems, Bryce. Maybe you should have thought about that before you decided to wreck my family." His face contorts with anger. "Listen here, you pathetic—" "No, you listen." I cut him off, my voice low and dangerous. "You took everything from me. Now I'm going to return the favor. This is just the beginning, Bryce. By the time I'm done, you'll wish you'd never laid eyes on Isabella." Bryce opens his mouth to retort, but I turn my back on him, walking towards my children. As I push them on the swings, I can feel his glare burning into my back. Good. Let him squirm. Days pass. I throw myself into work and the kids, trying to rebuild some semblance of normalcy. But the fire of revenge still burns hot in my chest. One evening, As I'm helping Emma with her homework, my phone buzzes with a text from Scott. "Hey man, can you come over? It's important." I frown, worry creeping in. "Sure thing." I text back. "Be there in 20. After arranging for the neighbor to watch the kids, I drive to Scott's place. He opens the door before I can knock, his face grim. "What's going on?" I ask as I step inside. Scott runs a hand through his hair. "It's Isabella. She showed up here about an hour ago, crying her eyes out. Says Bryce kicked her out." My heart skips a beat. "Where is she now?" "Living room," Scott replies. "Jack, man, she's a mess. I know what she did was awful, but..." I nod, steeling myself as I walk into the living room. Isabella is curled up on the couch, her eyes red and puffy. When she sees me, she sits up, her expression a mix of hope and fear. "Jack," she whispers, "I'm so sorry. For everything." I stand there, frozen, a whirlwind of emotions coursing through me. Part of me wants to comfort her, to take her in my arms like I used to. But the memory of her betrayal holds me back. "What happened?" I ask, my voice carefully neutral. Isabella wipes her eyes. "Bryce, he's not who I thought he was. He was so charming at first, but then he started getting controlling, jealous. And when his business started having problems, he changed. He said it was all my fault, that I was bad luck." I listen silently as she pours out her story. How Bryce had become increasingly volatile. How he'd finally snapped and thrown her out. As she talks, I can see the Isabella the first fell in love with peeking through vulnerable, honest, real. But then I remember the lies, the secrets, the pain she caused our children. I take a deep breath. "I'm sorry you're going through this, Isabella," I say, my voice cool. "But I'm not sure what you expect me to do about it." Her face falls. I don't know. I guess I hoped." "Jack, I've made such a mess of everything. I know I don't deserve it, but is there any chance we could..." I hold up a hand, cutting her off. "No, Isabella, there isn't. You made your choice. Now you have to live with the consequences." As I turn to leave, Scott catches my arm. "Jack, come on. You can't just leave her like this." I look at him, then back at Isabella's tear-stained face. For a moment, I waver. Then I shake my head. "I'm sorry, but I can't do this. Not now, maybe not ever. Goodbye, Isabella." As I drive home, my knuckles white on the steering wheel, I try to convince myself I've done the right thing. This is what I wanted, isn't it? To see Isabella suffer like I have? But as I walk into our new house, seeing the kids' toys scattered around, the family photos on the wall, I feel a hollowness in my chest. Is this really what winning feels like? The next few weeks are a blur. I throw myself into work and the kids, trying to ignore the nagging voice in the back of my mind. Isabella tries to reach out a few times, but I ignore her calls and texts. One sunny Saturday morning, I'm making pancakes for the kids when there's a knock at the door. It's Scott, his expression serious. "We need to talk," he says, stepping inside. I nod, turning to Emma and Jacob. "Hey kiddos, why don't you go watch some cartoons while I talk to Uncle Scott?" Once they're out of earshot, I turn to Scott. "What's going on?" He takes a deep breath. "It's about Isabella. Jack, man, she's not doing well. She lost her job. She's staying in some crappy motel. I know what she did was terrible, but seeing her like this, I feel a pang of guilt, quickly squashed by anger. That's not my problem anymore, Scott." Scott's eyes harden. "Isn't it? Jack, I've known you since we were kids. This revenge thing, it's not you. It's eating you up inside. Can't you see that?" I open my mouth to argue, but the words die in my throat. Because deep down I know he's right. Scott puts a hand on my shoulder. "Look, I'm not saying you have to forgive her or take her back. But maybe it's time to let go of the anger. For your sake, and for the kids." After Scott leaves, I sit on the porch for a long time, thinking about everything that's happened. The betrayal, the pain, the anger that's been driving me for months. And for what? Has any of it made me happy? Finally, I make a decision. I pull out my phone and send a text to Isabella. "We need to talk. Meet me at the park tomorrow at 2. The next day, I'm sitting on a bench when I see her approach. She looks thin, tired, a shadow of her former self. As she sits down beside me, I can smell cheap motel soap instead of her usual expensive perfume. "Thank you for meeting me," she says softly. I nod, taking a deep breath. Isabella, I'm not going to pretend that what you did wasn't devastating. You broke our family. You broke my trust. But I think it's time we both moved on. Her eyes widen with hope. Jack, does that mean? I hold up a hand. No, we're not getting back together. Too much has happened. But I'm willing to work on being civil for the sake of the kids. And I'm going to stop actively trying to make your life miserable. Tears well up in her eyes. Thank you, Jack. That's more than I deserve. We talked for a while longer, hashing out a tentative plan for her to see the kids more regularly. As we're about to leave, Isabella hesitates. Jack, she says, her voice barely above a whisper. For what it's worth, I am truly sorry. For everything. I look at her for a long moment, seeing the regret and pain in her eyes. Finally, I nod. I know. As I watch her walk away, I feel a weight lift from my shoulders. The anger that's been driving me for so long begins to dissipate, replaced by a tentative sense of peace. That evening, as I'm tucking the kids into bed, Emma looks up at me with her big, innocent eyes. Daddy, she says, are you and Mommy ever going to live together again? I sigh, sitting on the edge of her bed. No, sweetheart. Sometimes when grown-ups hurt each other, it's better if they live apart. But that doesn't mean we don't both love you and Jacob very much. She nods, her little face serious. Okay, but we're still a family, right? I feel a lump in my throat. Yeah, baby, we're still a family. Just a different kind of family now. After the kids are asleep, I sit on the porch, looking up at the stars. For the first time in months, I feel like I can breathe freely. The fires of betrayal have burned themselves out, leaving behind ashes from which something new can grow. I pull out my phone, hesitating for a moment before sending a text to Scott. You were right. Thanks for being there, man. His reply comes almost instantly. Anytime, buddy. Want to grab a beer tomorrow? I smile, feeling a glimmer of hope for the future. Sounds good? See you then. As I head back inside, I pause to look at the family photo still hanging on the wall. The smiling faces of a past that can never be reclaimed. But maybe, just maybe, we can build something new from the ashes of what was lost. I take the photo down, placing it in a drawer. Then I grab a blank frame, setting it on the mantel. It's empty now, but someday, it'll hold a new picture. A picture of a family that's been through fire and come out stronger on the other side. Tomorrow I'll start looking for a new job, maybe in a new city. A fresh start for me and the kids. It won't be easy, but for the first time in a long time, I'm looking forward to the future.